Hello everyone and welcome to Subreddit Dreams. I've been scouring the front pages and hidden gems of Reddit to bring you the most fascinating and unbelievable stories on the platform. If you love a great narrative as much as I do, be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on those notifications. Grab your favorite drink, get comfortable, and let's get straight into the stories.
Story 1.
6 years. That's how long it took to scrape the memory of that day off the inside of my skull. For 6 years, I'd been the one who got left at the altar. It was a brand seared onto my identity in my hometown. Marek, my high school sweetheart, had left me a note in the church vestibule. A 3-sentence masterpiece of cowardice that boiled down to times, "I'm sorry, I'm in love with someone else and she's pregnant." Asterisk. My family was my lifeboat. My parents, my aunt, and especially my younger sister, Clara. She was the one who held my hand while I dry heaved into a toilet, my $5,000 wedding dress pooled around my knees. She was the one who boxed up every picture of Mark and threw them into a bonfire in our backyard. She helped me rebuild. Now it was her turn. And she was doing it right. Her fiancé Liam was a solid guy. A genuinely good man who looked at her like she'd hung the moon. The only problem was money. They were young, renting a tiny apartment, and trying to build a life on 2 entry-level salaries. A big wedding was a fantasy, which is how we ended up in a bridal boutique that smelled like champagne and anxiety. Clara stood in front of a 3-way mirror, a vision in layers of silk and lace. It was the Times dress. The one she'd bookmarked 100 times, the one pinned to the top of her secret Pinterest board. It had delicate hand-stitched flowers cascading down the bodice and a train that seemed to go on for miles. It was perfect. It was also $7,000. I watched her face crumble as she looked at the price tag. The light in her eyes just went out. "Well," she whispered, her voice cracking. It was fun to pretend. She started to fumble with the zipper. "Wait," I said, stepping forward. I saw my own ghost in that mirror, a younger me giddy with a hope that was about to be obliterated. I had my own dream dress now sealed in a vacuum bag in my attic like a piece of toxic evidence. Maybe I could turn that poison into medicine for her. "What do you mean wait?" Clara asked, her eyes already welling up. "Helen, there's no way." "Consider it my wedding gift," I said, my voice firmer than I expected. "The whole thing. I'll buy it for you." The boutique fell silent. Clara froze. Then her face completely dissolved into tears. Not the sad, defeated tears from a moment ago, but a tidal wave of pure, unadulterated joy. She threw her arms around me, lace and tulle and all. "Are you serious?" she sobbed into my shoulder. "Helen, you can't. It's too much." "I can," I said, hugging her tight. "And I want to. You deserve to feel like a princess. No compromises." It was the best money I'd ever spent. Mom cried. The sales associate cried. The whole thing was a made-for-TV movie moment. For the next few weeks, I was the family hero. My generosity was the main topic of conversation. It felt good. It felt like I was finally closing a painful chapter and using my hard-earned success to create a beautiful new one for my sister. The deposit was paid. The dress was ordered. Everything was perfect. Until last night's family dinner. It was a casual Sunday thing at my parents' house. Me, Mom, Dad, Clara, and Liam, and my Aunt Carol. The air was thick with wedding talk, centerpieces, cake flavors, seating charts. I was sipping my wine, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the alcohol. I was genuinely happy for her. Dad was grilling Liam about pre-wedding jitters. "You getting cold feet yet, son?" he asked, winking. Liam laughed, grabbing Clara's hand. "Not a chance. Just nervous about tripping over my own feet when I see her walking down the aisle." It was sweet. Everyone smiled. Clara, a little flushed from her second glass of wine, let out a loud theatrical laugh. "Yeah, well, just make sure you actually show up," she said, her voice glib. "Are weird little knot tightened in my stomach. She wasn't done. She waved her fork in the air, a smirk playing on her lips. "Let's just hope he won't run away with a pregnant mistress or something." The words hit the air and hung there thick and toxic. My fork clattered against my plate. The sound was like a gunshot in the sudden silence. She hadn't just made a joke. She had recited almost word for word the single most traumatic event of my life. The line I had screamed at her through hysterical tears 6 years ago. Asterisk. "He left me for his pregnant mistress, Clara." Asterisk. My Aunt Carol broke the spell. She let out a sharp barking laugh. "Oh, Clara, that's just awful," she cackled, slapping the table. The warmth I'd felt moments before vanished, replaced by a glacial cold that started in my chest and spread through my limbs. The lively dining room, the smell of roast chicken, the faces of my family, it all faded into a dull humming background. All I could see was Mark's handwriting on that crumpled piece of paper. All I could feel was the suffocating weight of that veil. I looked up. Clara was still smiling a little nervously now, watching me, waiting for me to laugh along, waiting for me to validate her joke. My own sister. The one I just handed a $7,000 dream to, and she was using my nightmare as a punchline for a cheap laugh. My mother's face was a mask of strained pleasantry. "Clara, don't be morbid," she chided gently. My father cleared his throat. "Helen, honey, she was just kidding around." But I wasn't listening. The blood was pounding in my ears, a furious drumbeat of betrayal. I stared across the table right into my sister's eyes. The smirk was gone, replaced by a flicker of dawning horror as she finally registered the look on my face. She knew what she'd done. And in that one shattering moment, something inside me finally broke. My voice was quiet, but it sliced through the room. "What did you just say?" Claire's face went white. The smirk was gone, replaced by a panicked, flickering guilt. "Helen, It was just a joke. A stupid joke." "A joke," I repeated, the word tasting like poison. I pushed my chair back, the legs screeching against the hardwood floor. Everyone flinched. "You think that's a joke?" "Helen, honey, calm down," my father started, raising his hands in a placating gesture. "She didn't mean it." I didn't even look at him. My eyes were locked on my sister. "You stood there in that boutique and you cried in my arms. You said I was the most generous person you knew." Was that a joke too? Were you laughing at me then, thinking about how you could use the story of my life's biggest humiliation for a cheap laugh later? Tears started to stream down Clara's face. They weren't the tears of joy from the bridal shop. These were the panicked, selfish tears of someone who'd just been caught. "No, of course not. I'm so sorry." I wasn't thinking. "That's the problem, Clara. You never think I was on my feet now, my whole body vibrating with a rage I hadn't felt in 6 years. It was the rage I should have felt at Mark, but had instead turned inward. Now it had a target. You took the single most painful day of my life, a day you supposedly helped me survive, and you served it up like an appetizer. You and Aunt Carol cackling like hyenas." Aunt Carol looked down at her plate, suddenly fascinated by her mashed potatoes. "That is enough," my mother said, her voice sharp. "You are making a scene, Helen. Apologize to your aunt." I laughed. A raw, ugly sound that had no humor in it. "Apologize? Are you kidding me?" I grabbed my purse from the floor and my keys from the counter. The metallic jingle was the only sound in the dead silent room. Clara stood up, her hands outstretched. "Helen, please don't go. I'm sorry. I'll do anything. Please." I walked to the door, my back to all of them. I could feel their eyes on me, could feel the weight of their collective judgment. They wanted me to be the bigger person. To swallow the pain, smooth things over, and let Clara have her perfect wedding. Just like they wanted me to get over Mark and stop being the one who got left at the altar. I paused, with my hand on the doorknob, and turned my head just enough to look at my sister. Her face was a mess of tears and makeup, her mouth trembling. She looked pathetic. And for the first time, I felt nothing. No pity, no empathy. Just a cold, hard finality. You can think about how sorry you are while you're shopping for a dress you can actually afford, I said, my voice flat and empty. Because as of right now, you are getting $0 from me. I didn't wait for a reaction. I walked out and pulled the door shut behind me, the click of the latch sounding like a gavel. I made it halfway to my car before the front door flew open again. Helen, it was my dad, his voice booming into the quiet suburban street. Get back here. This is absurd. I ignored him, fumbling with my keys, my hands shaking so badly I couldn't get the key into the lock. He caught up to me just as I got the door open, his hand landing on the roof of the car with a heavy thud. You're going to walk out on your family over a bad joke, he demanded, his face ruddy with anger. A bad joke. I finally got the car door open and slid inside, but he held it so I couldn't close it. Dad, she took a knife and twisted it into the deepest wound I have. And you're all defending her. Nobody's defending her. We're trying to keep the peace. She's in there sobbing, completely hysterical. Good, I said, jamming the key into the ignition. The engine roared to life. Don't be so cruel, he snapped. She's your sister. She's devastated about the dress. All she can talk about is how she's going to lose the dress. Is that what you want? To ruin her wedding? His words hit me harder than Clara's joke. It wasn't about my pain. It wasn't about the betrayal. It was about the dress. About the wedding. About preserving the perfect family fantasy. I was just a line item, a check that was suddenly refusing to be cashed. I looked at him, my father, the man who was supposed to protect me. She's the one who was cruel. She took my generosity and threw it back in my face. This isn't about the money anymore, Dad. It's about respect. A respect she obviously doesn't have for me. That's ridiculous. It's dark humor. It's how kids these days talk. I'm not a kid. And that wasn't humor. It was mockery, I said, my voice hardening into something I barely recognized. You taught me to stand up for myself. This is me standing up for myself. I will not pay to have my own trauma used as a punchline in my own family. He sighed a long, weary sound of parental disappointment. Helen, for God's sake, just forgive her. Be the bigger person and pay for the dress. Don't let one stupid comment destroy your relationship with your sister. Our relationship is already destroyed, I said. She destroyed it tonight. Not me. I put the car in reverse. He finally took his hand off the door. I looked at him one last time, standing there under the porch light, his face a mixture of anger and disbelief. He didn't get it. He never would. Tell Clara, I said, my voice, as cold as the night air, that forgiveness is free. But a dream wedding dress cost $7,000. I didn't look back as I pulled out of the driveway. My phone was already buzzing in my purse. A text from Clara. Then another from my mom. Then a call. I silenced it, tossing it onto the passenger seat. They could leave all the messages they wanted. Let them call me harsh. Let them call me cruel. For the first time in 6 years, I wasn't the victim in my own story. And that felt better than any dress money could buy.
Story 2.
5 years. We'd been together for 5 years, and 3 of them were spent staring at each other through a screen. I was 23, she was 25, and we were both drowning in the final brutal stretch of our college programs. The 800 miles between us felt more like 8000. Every conversation was clipped, strained. We were running on fumes, and the engine of our relationship was sputtering. The fight that broke everything started over something so stupid it still makes my head spin. My brother had posted a picture from his birthday dinner. Just a group shot. Me, him, my parents, and his new girlfriend, Sarah. A few hours later, my phone buzzed. It was her. My fiancée. You have a crush on her, don't you? The text was so out of left field I thought it was a joke. Who, Sarah? What are you talking about? Don't play dumb. The way you're standing next to her in that picture? You're practically on top of her. I pulled up the photo. I was standing next to my brother. Sarah was on his other side. There was a solid 3 feet of air between us. Are you looking at the same picture I am? I'm nowhere near her. The 3 dots appeared and disappeared for a full minute. It's the way you look at her. I can see it. You think she's prettier than me. This was her new thing. Jealousy weaponized. Any woman I came into contact with, a classmate, a cashier, my own damn brother's girlfriend, was suddenly a threat. It was exhausting. This is insane, I typed back, my thumbs jabbing the screen. She's my brother's girlfriend. I barely know her. You're inventing things to be angry about. Her call came instantly. I answered and her voice was already tight with tears. So I'm crazy now, is that it? You cheat on me in your head, and then you call me crazy for noticing. Cheat on you in my head, I practically yelled, dropping my textbook on the floor. I'm studying 20 hours a day for my finals. I don't have time to eat, let alone have an imaginary affair with my brother's girlfriend. You always do this. You turn it around on me. We went in circles for an hour. Her accusations got wilder. My denials got louder. Every word was a shovel, digging the trench between us a little deeper. I could feel a migraine starting behind my eyes. I had a thermodynamics exam in less than a week that I was already on track to fail. I couldn't do this. I couldn't do times us times right now. Stop, I said, cutting her off mid-sentence. The word hung in the dead air. What, she sniffled. We need to stop. This isn't helping. I can't focus. You can't focus. We're just tearing each other apart before the most important exams of our lives. I took a deep breath. Let's take a break. You're breaking up with me, her voice cracked, panicked. No. Not breaking up. A break. A pause. 1 month. No contact. We just focus completely on school. We get through our finals and then we talk. When we're not this stressed out, when we can actually think straight. Silence. I could hear her breathing shaky and uncertain. 1 month, she finally whispered. Okay. The 30 days were hell, but a productive hell. I lived in the library. I mainlined coffee and Adderall. I passed my exams. The silence from her was a constant low-level hum of anxiety in the back of my mind, but it was better than the screaming matches. I told myself I was doing the right thing, giving us space to heal, to reset. The day after my last final, I sat staring at my phone, my thumb hovering over her name. Before I could decide what to say, a message from her popped up. Hey, are you done with finals? My heart hammered against my ribs. Yeah. Just finished my last one this morning. You? Finished yesterday. I miss you. A wave of relief washed over me. Maybe it had worked. Maybe the space was what we needed. I miss you too. More than you know. We talked for hours that night. It felt normal. We avoided the big subjects, just catching up, laughing about stupid things. It felt like us again. For the first time in months, I let myself feel hopeful. I had spent over $17,000 on this relationship. Over the years, flights, gifts, dinners, 1,000 little things. I'd even had my grandmother's engagement ring professionally restored and customized for her, a family heirloom that meant the world to me. I was all in. I just needed her to be too. A week later, we were on a video call. She was telling me about a difficult professor when her expression shifted. She started picking at a loose thread on her sweater, avoiding the camera. I have to tell you something, she said, her voice small. My stomach tightened. Okay. When we were going through that rough patch, before the break, I was really lonely and upset. I started talking to someone. An online friend. His name is Strat. He's in a few of the gaming communities I'm in. She looked up her eyes, pleading for understanding. He was just easy to talk to. He listened. And he helped me out. Helped you out how I asked my voice flat? Financially. Just a little. I was short on my textbook money and he sent me a couple $100. I was going to pay him back. A couple $100. From some random guy online, a guy she'd never mentioned. A cold knot formed in my gut, but I pushed it down. We were struggling. I was struggling. Maybe I hadn't been there for her enough. Okay, I said slowly. I don't love that, but I get it. You were stressed. We weren't talking. I was trying to be the bigger person. I was trying to make this work. Thank you for understanding, she said, relief flooding her face. It meant a lot that he was there for me. I nodded, forcing a smile I didn't feel. As long as it's over, we're back now. That's all that matters. She held my gaze, but something was off. The relief in her eyes was being replaced by a shadow of guilt. She bit her lip, then took a shaky breath. It didn't stop there, she said, her voice barely a whisper. Liam, there's more. My blood ran cold. The forced smile fell from my face. What do you mean there's more? She looked down at her hands, refusing to meet my eyes on the screen. During the month we were on our break, she trailed off, swallowing hard. Things escalated. Escalated, how I demanded, my voice rising. What did you do? She finally looked up, her eyes swimming with tears that didn't look real. They looked like props. Her lips parted, and the words she spoke shattered the entire world around me. I sent him pictures of myself, Liam. My mind went blank. Pictures. What kind of pictures? Her voice was flat, devoid of emotion, like she was reading a weather report. Nudes. The video feed froze for a second, but her face was still there, a perfect mask of practiced sorrow. My world tilted. The floor felt like it was dropping out from under me. You sent nudes, I repeated, the words tasting like ash. To Strat. The guy who sent you textbook money. Yes. No hesitation. Just a flat statement of fact. A laugh sharp and ugly tore out of my throat. Of course. Of course you did. And all that shit you gave me about Sarah, about my brother's girlfriend, that was all just projection, wasn't it? You were already talking to this guy, so you had to invent a reason to believe I was doing the same thing. She flinched. A direct hit. It wasn't like that. Don't lie to me, I snarled, leaning into my laptop camera. The person staring back at her wasn't her fiancé anymore. I didn't recognize him. Don't you dare lie to me now. You picked a fight to push me away. You agreed to that 1-month break so you could have a free pass to test drive someone new. Her fake tears dried up instantly, replaced by a cold defensiveness. I was lonely. You weren't there for me. Strat was. He listened to me. He actually cared about what I was going through. I was drowning in my final semester of engineering, the same way you were in nursing. We were supposed to be getting through it together. I slammed my hand on my desk, the webcam rattling. Instead, you were getting validation from some random dude on the internet. You let him pay your bills, and then you sent him photos of your body. My body. The one you were supposed to be marrying. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. I waited for an apology. for a sob, for anything that sounded like remorse. I got nothing. Do you regret it? I finally asked, my voice dangerously quiet. She looked away, tucking a piece of hair behind her ear as if we were discussing the weather. No. The word hit me harder than a punch. No. I don't regret it, she said, her voice gaining a chilling strength. She finally met my gaze on the screen. Honestly, Liam, I was torn. I had real feelings for him. I almost used the money he sent me to buy a plane ticket to go see him. My vision swam. She hadn't just cheated. She had been actively planning to leave. She had weighed 5 years of my life, of my love, of my support, against a few weeks of online chatter with a stranger. And I had almost lost. He told me to choose, she continued, as if she were the hero of this story. He said he wouldn't be the other man. So I had to make a decision. And I chose you. I thought you'd be happy. Happy. She thought I'd be times happy, times to know I was plan A only because plan B had a conscience. She was presenting her decision to stay with me as a gift. A favor. The ring, I said, the words catching in my throat. My grandmother's ring. The one I had restored for you. All the money, the flights, the years. That was all just a placeholder while you shopped around. That's not fair. Fair, I exploded. You want to talk about fair? I have spent over $17,000 keeping this relationship afloat while you were taking money from another man and sending him naked pictures of yourself. I was your backup plan, your safe bet, and you have the audacity to sit there and tell me you don't regret a single second of it. I stood up, backing away from the screen, needing to put distance between us, even if it was only digital. We're done, I said. The words felt foreign, but right. The engagement is over. It's done. Liam, wait. I didn't wait. I slammed my laptop shut. The silence in my apartment was absolute. For 5 years, every quiet moment had been filled with thoughts of her. Now, there was just a gaping, echoing void. 2 days later, the phone call started. Then the texts. A fire hose of apologies and excuses. Asterisk, I made a mistake. I was confused. I was just scared. I love you. It was you I chose. It's always been you. Asterisk. The words she should have said from the start now deployed like a last-ditch weapon system when she realized the consequences were real. I let her spin for a full day before I finally answered. I was wrong, she sobbed into the phone. I was so wrong. Please, Liam. 5 years. Don't throw it all away. I'll do anything. My heart, stupid and conditioned, felt a flicker of something. But my brain was cold stone. I had spent the last 48 hours talking to my brother, my parents, anyone who would listen. They all saw what I was too close to see, a pattern of manipulation I had mistaken for love. Anything I asked, my voice flat. Yes, anything. I promise. Okay. One condition. You delete and block every single male friend you have on all your social media and in your phone. Strat first, then all the rest. The ones you game with, the ones from high school, all of them. From now on, your only male friends are my friends and my family. That's the deal. It was an impossible, controlling demand. I knew it. But I wasn't trying to fix the relationship. I was testing the wreckage. I wanted to see if she understood what she had broken. Trust. Silence. Not the answer of, okay, done. Not, I'm deleting them right now, just dead air. Well, What about Mark? She finally stammered. He's practically my brother. And what about David? He's gay. And there it was. The tell. The final damning piece of evidence. Even now, with everything on the line, she was hedging, negotiating, protecting her network. She wasn't willing to give up her audience. I laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. It was the sound of a lock breaking. You still don't get it, I said. It was never about them. It was about you. It was about proving you could be trusted again. And you can't. You failed. That's not fair. You're being unreasonable. I'm being done, I corrected her. I called your mom. She's getting the ring from your apartment and mailing it back to me. It's a family heirloom, and you are no longer family. A choked gasp on the other end. I hope it was worth it, I said, and for the first time in 5 years I felt the immense weight of our relationship lift off my shoulders. It wasn't love. It was a burden. A nightmare I'd finally woken up from. Goodbye. I hung up the phone before she could say another word, and then I blocked her number. I stared out my window, the sky clearer than it had been in years. I had just lost my fiancée, but I had saved myself from a wife. And that felt like a win.
Story 3.
My girlfriend Chloe can handle chopsticks better than I can. I'm not kidding. She's got this elegant, precise way of plucking a single grain of rice from her bowl, a skill that took me 20 years to master, and she picked up in about 20 minutes. My mom adores her for it. More than that, she adores her for trying. Chloe, a blonde from Ohio with a laugh that can fill a stadium, will try anything. Stinky tofu. It's an experience, she'll say, pinching her nose. Durian. You only live once. My dad's bafflingly bitter herbal teas. She sips them with a straight face and says, "It tastes very healthy, mister." Chen. My brother David's fiancée Ashley is also white. That's where the similarities end. The first time my parents met her, Mom cooked for 2 days straight. She made a feast glistening Peking duck, heaps of longevity noodles, steamed fish, delicate with ginger, and scallion baskets of xiaolong bao. Ashley sat at the table, a polite frozen smile on her face, and moved a single piece of broccoli around her plate for an hour. I have a sensitive stomach, she explained, taking a sip of water. My mom's face fell, but she recovered quickly. Oh, of course, Sebastian, run to the pantry, get the saltine crackers. Ashley ate 3 saltine crackers for dinner. That was the beginning. It got worse. A few months later, it was Lunar New Year. Our house was a sea of red and gold. The air was thick with the smell of incense and pan-fried dumplings. My parents were handing out red envelopes, the crisp bills inside, symbolizing good fortune. When my mom approached Ashley with a smile, holding out the decorated paper, Ashley held up a hand. Oh, that's so sweet, but we don't really do that. My mom paused, confused. It is for good luck for the new year. Right, but it's February, Ashley said with a little laugh, as if explaining something to a child. New Year's was a month ago. We don't really celebrate, you know, the fake one. The word hung in the air, heavy and sharp. Asterisk. Fake. Asterisk. My dad, who rarely speaks, put his teacup down with a sharp clink. David, my brother, just wrapped an arm around Ashley's shoulder. Babe, it's just a tradition. And it's a lovely one, she said, her voice dripping with condescension. For you guys. She never took the envelope. But the wedding planning? That was the main event. That's when Ashley went from passive dismissal to active demolition. We were all at my parents' house for a Sunday lunch, one where Ashley had brought her own Tupperware containing a garden salad when she and David announced they'd booked the venue. It's a beautiful country club, Ashley beamed, showing us pictures on her phone of rolling green hills and a white pillared building. So classic. So American. Very nice, my mom said, her voice tight. We can have the tea ceremony in the garden. Ashley's smile didn't waver, but her eyes went cold. Oh, we won't be doing a tea ceremony. No tea ceremony, my dad asked, looking up from his newspaper. It was the first time he'd ever shown interest in wedding details. No, Ashley said firmly. It's not us. We're not having any of that. Or the red dresses, or the dragons, or anything. We want a simple, elegant American wedding. She said American like it was a shield. Like she was building a wall to keep us out. My brother just sat there nodding. Yeah, Mom. We want to keep things simple. Simple, my mom repeated the word, sounding like a curse. Her eyes were glistening. Erasing us is simple. Nobody is erasing anyone, David snapped, his voice defensive. It's times our times wedding, isn't it? We get to choose. The rest of the lunch was murderously quiet. I watched Ashley pick at her lettuce completely unfazed while my mother stared at a spot on the wall, her food untouched. Later that week, I got the call I was expecting. It was my mom, her voice choked with tears. She wants us to be invisible, Sebastian. She is ashamed of us. Ma, that's not true. It is, she cried. No traditions, no family. She wants your father to wear a tuxedo, not his formal tunic. She wants to pretend we do not exist. Your father and I, we are not going. What, Mom? You can't be serious. We will not sit in the back and pretend we are strangers at our own son's wedding, she said, her voice gaining a steely edge. We will not be erased. If she does not want a Chinese family, then she will not have one. We are done. I felt a spike of panic. As much as Ashley infuriated me, this was my brother. A complete family implosion was not the answer. I drove over to their house that night. I found them in the living room, my dad staring silently into the fireplace, my mom dabbing her eyes with a tissue. I sat down on the ottoman in front of them. Don't skip the wedding, I said quietly. She does not want us there, my father said, his voice a low rumble. She wants you there, I argued, though the words tasted like lies. She just has a different vision for her wedding, and it's their day. It's not about us. It's about David and Ashley. We have to let them have the wedding they want, even if we don't understand it. I talked for an hour. I reasoned. I pleaded. I reminded them that David was their son, that cutting him off would be a wound that would never heal. I told them that being the bigger person meant showing up, smiling, and supporting him no matter what. Finally, my mom let out a long, shuddering sigh. Okay, she whispered, looking at my dad. He gave a single, reluctant nod. We will go. Relief washed over me, so potent it made me dizzy. I had stopped the bomb from going off. I had kept the peace. I left their house feeling like a UN negotiator who just brokered a ceasefire. Driving home, my phone buzzed. It was a text from David. Asterisk. Thanks for talking them down. Huge help. Asterisk. I smiled, feeling a small sense of victory. Then a second text came through. Asterisk. Hey, since you're on a roll, Mom's birthday is next week. We should do a family dinner. There's something important Ashley and I need to discuss with them about the wedding costs. Asterisk. The phone rang with an aggression I could feel through the floorboards. I saw David's name and picked it up with a sigh. Hey. What did you do? He roared, the sound distorted by his fury. In the background, I could hear a high-pitched keening shriek that I recognized as Ashley. What are you talking about? I asked, already knowing. The jewelry Mom just called? She said they're not getting it. What the hell did you say to them? I said what you didn't have the spine to say, David. That it's insane to give a $50 000 cultural gift to someone who spits on our culture. A shriek from the background became clearer. It was Ashley screaming at David. Tell him he's a jealous, vindictive snake. Tell him. You're a jealous snake, man, David echoed, his voice cracking. You couldn't stand to see me get something you didn't have. You have to ruin everything. Ruin what? Your cash grab. I shot back, my own anger flaring. She wants an American wedding, remember? The American tradition is a toaster. I'll buy you a nice one. It'll even have a bagel setting. This isn't a joke, he screamed. That was supposed to help with our down payment. We were counting on that. And there it was. The ugly, bald truth. It was never about tradition. It was a transaction. Oh, so you were just going to sell it? I laughed, a bitter, humorless sound. Wow. That's even worse. Fix it, Sebastian, he snarled, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Ashley was sobbing loudly, now a theatrical gulping sound. Call them back. Tell them you were wrong. Tell them you were emotional and stupid, and you take it all back. Convince them to buy the jewelry. No. The line went silent for a beat. I could hear him breathing ragged and fast. No, he repeated, his voice full of disbelief. No, David. I'm not doing that. Then you're not coming, he said, the words cold and final. You, Mom, Dad, Chloe. None of you. If the jewelry isn't at my apartment in a little red box by next Friday, you are all uninvited from my wedding. You are not my family anymore. He hung up. I stood there, phone in my hand, the dial tone buzzing in my ear. The silence in my apartment felt heavy, suffocating. He'd actually done it. He'd put a price tag on his family, and it was $50,000. The official uninvitation arrived 2 days later. It wasn't a call or a text. It was an email sent from Ashley's pristine corporate-looking account. Asterisk. Subject. An update regarding our wedding. Asterisk. David and Sebastian. The opening was a clear indicator of who was in charge. My brother was now a secondary character in his own life. Asterisk. Due to recent and unfortunate family disagreements that we have been unable to resolve, we have made the difficult decision to proceed with a more intimate wedding ceremony. Consequently, we will have to rescind the invitations for Sebastian Chen, Chloe Miller, and Mr. and Mrs. Chen. We wish you all the best. Asterisk. Asterisk. Sincerely, asterisk. Asterisk. Ashley and David. Asterisk. It was the most brutally polite go to hell I'd ever read. I forwarded it to my parents without comment. My mom called me 30 seconds later. Good, she said, her voice sharp and clear, devoid of the tears I'd expected. Good. The trash has taken itself out. Now we do not have to sit there and watch her pretend she likes us. She has made our lives simpler. Ma. No, I am serious, Sebastian. Your father and I are relieved. A person who will disown her family over jewelry is not a person we want our son to marry. But he has made his choice. The matter is finished. She was trying to be strong, but I could hear the tremor beneath the steel. This wasn't just losing a daughter-in-law they never wanted. It was losing their firstborn son. My father in the background said nothing at all. His silence was always worse than her anger. Chloe found me that night staring at the email on my laptop screen, reading the words over and over. She wrapped her arms around my neck from behind and rested her chin on my shoulder. You're wondering if you should have just kept your mouth shut, she said softly. I nodded, unable to speak. The guilt was a physical weight in my chest. I had pulled the pin on the grenade. I had started the war. Maybe if I had just let it go, let them give her the jewelry, my parents would still have their son. Look at me, she said. She came around the chair and knelt in front of me, taking my hands. Her reaction proved you were right. This wasn't about you meddling. This was about you holding up a mirror and her not liking the greedy, entitled person she saw. You didn't break your family, Sebastian. She she did. And David let her. The wedding day came a month later. It was a perfect sunny Saturday in June. My parents' house was quiet. To combat the oppressive silence, my mom decided to wage war on her garden. She was outside from dawn until dusk, viciously pulling weeds, attacking overgrown bushes with a pair of shears. My dad locked himself in his study, ostensibly to do paperwork, but I knew he was just staring at the walls. I couldn't stay there. Chloe and I went for a drive, ending up at the beach. We walked along the shore, the waves crashing in a steady rhythm, washing away the silence. "Do you think he's happy?" I asked, watching a wave pull back from the sand. "Right now," probably Chloe said, squeezing my hand. "He has a beautiful bride in a white dress at a country club. He has the American wedding. He thinks he won." "And what did we win?" I asked, the bitterness creeping back in. "Us," she said simply. "Look." She pointed back toward the boardwalk. My parents were there. My mom must have called them. She was holding a small paper bag, and my dad was holding 2 cups of his awful herbal tea. They walked slowly across the sand toward us. My mom handed me the bag. Inside were 4 perfect warm egg tarts from their favorite bakery. Her peace offering. We sat there, the 4 of us, on the sand. The setting sun painted the sky in streaks of orange and purple. We ate the flaky tarts, and my dad made Chloe laugh by describing how my mom had nearly decapitated her prize rose bushes that morning. For the first time all day, my mom smiled, a real, genuine smile. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a notification from a social media app. A cousin had just posted a photo from the wedding. I felt a morbid curiosity pull at me. Against my better judgment, I opened it. There they were. David and Ashley. He was in a standard black tux. She was in a massive white dress, her smile wide and triumphant. They were standing under a flower-covered archway surrounded by her family. Her parents, her siblings, her cousins. All smiling, all blonde, all perfectly American. There wasn't a single Asian face in the photo. It was exactly what she wanted. We had been completely and totally erased. I looked at the picture at my brother's smiling face, and I didn't feel the sting I expected. I didn't feel anger or jealousy. I just felt a quiet, profound sadness. He had his simple, elegant American wedding. And here on the beach, with the taste of egg tart and bitter tea on my tongue, watching the woman I loved laugh with my parents, I had everything else. And I knew who had gotten the better deal.
Story 4.
I was 10 when my mom married Lee. At the reception, my new 8-year-old brother Sam got to make a toast with a tiny glass of sparkling cider. Everyone oohed and awed as he slurred his way through a speech about gaining a new daddy. I spent the whole night in a corner nursing a Shirley Temple invisible. Lee was the one who found me. He crouched down his tux, smelling like fancy soap and champagne. Not a party girl, huh? I shook my head. Me neither, he said with a wink. They're all a bit much, aren't they? That was Lee. In a family where I was an afterthought, he was the one who saw me. My mother, once she'd secured Lee's wealth, poured all her attention into Sam. He was her golden boy, the true heir to the life she'd always wanted. She'd coo over his report cards even when my grades were better. She'd brag about his Pee-wee football trophies while I was winning statewide art competitions she never bothered to attend. Sam was the sun, and Mom and I were just 2 sad little planets caught in his orbit. Lee's relatives weren't much better. His sister Carol always pinched Sam's cheeks and slipped him a $20 bill, her eyes sliding right over me. To them, I was just the baggage that came with their brother's new wife. But Lee was my person. He was the one who taught me how to invest using a stock market simulator. He was the one who read my college application essays and told me they were brilliant. When I got accepted to a university in London for graphic design, my mother's only comment was, "Isn't that a bit extravagant?" Lee overheard her. He walked into my room later that night and handed me an envelope. Inside was a cashier's check that covered my first year's tuition and housing. "Don't you ever let them make you feel small, Mila," he said, his voice firm. "You're my girl. Go take on the world." And I did. For 4 years, London was my escape. Lee and I had weekly video calls. He'd ask about my projects, my friends, my life. He sent care packages filled with American snacks and ridiculous souvenirs from his business trips. My contact with Mom and Sam dwindled to stilted holiday calls and the occasional guilt-tripping text from her. "Your brother misses you," one read, even though I knew Sam hadn't asked about me once. I was finishing up my final portfolio a week from graduation when my phone rang. It was Mom. My heart instantly seized up. She never called. "Mila." "You need to come home," she said. Her voice was flat, devoid of emotion. "It's Lee. He's gone." I didn't hear the rest. "It was a heart attack," she said. Sudden, no warning. The world tilted on its axis, the colors of my apartment dimming to a dull, muted gray. The flight back was a 20-hour blur of recycled air and stale pretzels. I walked into the house I grew up in, and it felt like a stranger's home. It was eerily quiet. Mom and Sam were in the living room, dressed in black, looking more inconvenienced than grief-stricken. Lee's sister Carol was there too, perched on an armchair, her eyes red but sharp, watching everyone. Mila, Mom said, her tone the same as it was on the phone. It wasn't a greeting. It was an acknowledgement of a task completed. Sam just grunted from the couch, scrolling on his phone. He hadn't even looked up. The funeral was suffocating. I listened to people give hollow speeches about a man they barely knew. I stood there, a ghost in a black dress, while my mother accepted condolences with a practiced, somber grace. The only real thing in that whole miserable day was the tight anchoring grip of Lee's hand that I could no longer feel in mine. A week later, we were all summoned to the lawyer's office for the will reading. The room was tense, all dark wood and the smell of old paper. Me, Mom, Sam, and Aunt Carol sat on one side of a ridiculously large mahogany desk. The lawyer, a kind-faced man named Mr. Abernathy, cleared his throat and put on his glasses. He went through the smaller bequests, first donations to charities, a few items for friends. My stomach was in knots. I expected a token amount, something to help me get started after graduation, a safety net. To my wife Helen, Mr. Abernathy read, "I leave the sum of $250,000 and the ownership of our primary residence free and clear." My mom's face tightened. I could see the furious calculation behind her eyes. It was a lot of money, but for a man of Lee's wealth, it was a pittance. To Samuel Vance, the lawyer, continued, not looking up, "I also leave the sum of $250,000 to be placed in a trust until his 30th birthday." Sam scoffed. "A trust? I'm 22. Mr. Abernathy ignored him. He took a deep breath, and his eyes found mine. "And to my stepdaughter Mila, who I've always considered my own, I bequeath the remainder of my entire estate, including all properties, stocks, and liquid assets valued at approximately $7 million. The silence that followed was thick and violent. I couldn't breathe. $7 million. The number didn't even sound real. My gaze flickered to my mother. Her carefully constructed mask of grief had shattered, replaced by a pale, quivering fury. Sam's jaw was on the floor, his eyes wide with disbelief. "That's impossible," my mother whispered, her voice a low hiss. "There's been a mistake." "There is no mistake, Helen," Mr. Abernathy said softly. He picked up another sheet of paper. Lee also included a codicil, which he insisted I read aloud. "It was added 6 months ago." He cleared his throat again. The air crackled. "This codicil," he read, "is based on the results of a DNA test I privately conducted. The results confirm that Mr. Samuel Vance is not my biological son." The world stopped. Every sound in the room vanished. I stared at my mother, whose face had drained of all color. She looked like a cornered animal. Sam shot to his feet, his chair scraping violently against the floorboards. "That's a lie," he shouted, pointing a trembling finger at the lawyer. "He's lying. Mom, tell him he's lying." But she couldn't speak. She just sat there, frozen as decades of secrets unraveled around her. Aunt Carol let out a small, sharp gasp, her eyes burning holes into my mother's head. And me, all I could feel was a profound aching sadness for Lee. The man who had been my rock had been living with this crushing betrayal all alone. The ride home was a silent war. Back at the house, the fragile truce shattered. My mother and Sam cornered me in the living room, their faces twisted with a righteous rage that made my skin crawl. The shock had burned off, leaving behind pure, ugly entitlement. "This is a sick joke," my mother started, her voice dangerously low. "A sick, vengeful joke from a dying man." "It's what he wanted," I said, my own voice barely a whisper. "He was sick. You obviously manipulated him," Sam snarled, stepping forward. He looked like a stranger, his features warped by greed. "That money belongs to this family." "He was times my family," I shot back, a spark of anger finally cutting through my grief. "The only one who ever acted like it." My mother's eyes narrowed into slits. "You listen to me, Mila. You will give us our share. Half. 25% for me, 25% for your brother? It is the only right and decent thing to do after everything we've done for you." I stared at her at the sheer audacity of it. The years of neglect, of being made to feel like a burden, flashed before my eyes. I thought of Lee, of his unwavering kindness, of the freedom he had so deliberately given me. "No," I said. The word was quiet, but it landed in the room like a stone. Sam took another step closer, his fists clenched. "Oh, you'll do it," he seethed, his voice dropping to a menacing growl. "Or we'll see you in court. We'll drag your name and his through so much mud you'll drown in it." The threat hung in the air, thick and rancid. I looked at Sam, at the stranger wearing my brother's face, and felt nothing but a cold, hard certainty. The fear I thought would paralyze me simply wasn't there. "Go ahead," I said, my voice steady. "Sue me. Let's get a court to hear how Mom cheated on the man who gave you everything you've ever had. Let's publicize the DNA test. I'm sure Lee's business partners would love to hear all about it." My mother flinched as if I'd slapped her. Sam's face went from red to a mottled purple. "You wouldn't," he spat. "You've misjudged me my entire life," I said, looking from his furious face to my mother's pale one. "Both of you. You thought I was weak because I was quiet. You thought I was a pushover because I didn't fight for your attention. You were wrong." I took a breath, the lawyer's office, Lee's quiet, strength, all of it solidifying into a plan. "I will not give you the principal, not $1 of it. That was Lee's gift to me. But I'll make you an offer, and it's the only one you're going to get." They stared their greed momentarily, overriding their rage. "I will invest the entire inheritance," I explained the words, feeling like Lee himself was speaking through me. Aggressively, but smartly. The way he taught me. "I will take 50% of the annual gains for myself. You two can split the other 50%. You'll have a significant income for the rest of your lives, but you will never touch the core amount. It remains mine as Lee intended." Sam let out a bark of a laugh. "You want us to live on your table scraps? On times, interest times? That money is ours." "It's not," I said flatly. "We want our half now, Mila," my mother shrieked, her voice cracking. $2 million each. We're not begging you for an allowance." "Then you get nothing," I said. "That's enough." The voice cut through the room like shattered glass. We all turned. Aunt Carol was on her feet, her expression one of utter disgust. She had been a silent observer, a piece of furniture, but now she was a coiled viper. Her eyes were fixed on my mother. "Helen, you will shut your mouth," she said, her voice low and venomous. "You will sit down and you will be silent. Do you have any idea the humiliation you have brought upon this family, upon my brother's memory?" My mother opened her mouth to protest, but Carol took a step forward. "Don't. Don't you say one more word? You lived in his house, you spent his money, all while carrying on with God knows who and passing off another man's child as his. The fact that he didn't throw you out on the street with nothing but the clothes on your back is a testament to his kindness, a kindness you clearly don't deserve." She turned her fiery gaze on Sam. "And you are a product of her deception. Lee gave you a name, a home, a life of privilege you had no right to. And this is how you repay him, by trying to steal from the one person he truly loved as his own." Sam shrank back, all his bluster gone, looking for the first time like the child he was. Carol's eyes finally met mine, and for the first time in my life, I saw a glimmer of respect, of kinship. "Mila's offer is more than generous. It's a gift. You will accept it. Because if you pursue this in court, if you breathe one word of this to anyone, I will personally see to it that the entire family fortune is leveraged against you. We will countersue for fraud. We will make sure every friend you have, every person you know, is aware of exactly what you are. You will be ruined. Is that clear?" My mother collapsed onto the sofa, a choked sob escaping her lips. Sam just stood there dumbfounded. The showdown was over. I hadn't even needed to win it. Lee's real family had. The next day, I was back in Mr. Abernathy's office. I told him everything, the demands, the threats, my offer, and Carol's intervention. He listened, patiently nodding. "Carol called me this morning," he said when I finished. "She told me the family would stand behind whatever decision you made. They want to honor Lee's wishes." "I don't want to give them what they demanded," I said. "But I don't want them to be destitute. Lee, he wouldn't have wanted that regardless of everything." "There are better ways," Mr. Abernathy said, a small, knowing smile on his face. "Ways that protect you and Lee's gift." He laid out the plan. It was simple, elegant, and ironclad. I wasn't just investing the money. I was creating an irrevocable trust. My mother and Sam would be the beneficiaries. I would be the trustee. The trust would be funded with $2 million from the estate. The capital would be invested, and the dividends, and only the dividends, would be paid out to them in monthly installments. They could never access the principal. They couldn't borrow against it. They couldn't sell their interest. They would receive a steady, comfortable income for the rest of their lives, enough to maintain their lifestyle. But they would never hold the wealth. They would be provided for, but they would never be in control. It was the perfect solution. It was a golden cage. A final posthumous lesson from Lee on the difference between being rich and being wealthy. I had Mr. Abernathy draw up the papers. He sent a copy to my mother's new lawyer, along with a polite but firm letter stating this was my final non-negotiable decision. They could accept the terms of the trust, or they could receive nothing at all, and we would see them in court with the full backing of the rest of Lee's family. They folded within 24 hours. I saw them one last time before I flew back to London. I went to the house to pack up my childhood bedroom and collect a few of Lee's things. A framed photo of us at my high school graduation. His favorite worn-in leather armchair for my new apartment, a box of his old finance. Books. Mom was in the kitchen staring out the window. She looked older, smaller. "The papers are signed," she said, not looking at me. "I know." "You'll be comfortable," I added. "You won't have to worry about money." She finally turned her eyes hollow. "It was never about the money, Mila. It was about respect. He disrespected me." I almost laughed. The cognitive dissonance was breathtaking. He gave you a life you could only dream of, and you repaid him with betrayal. The only disrespect I see is yours. I left her standing there and went to find Sam. He was in his room, surrounded by video games and expensive clothes. He didn't look up when I came in. "Enjoy the allowance," I said. He just grunted. That was it. No tearful goodbyes. No final dramatic confrontation. Just the quiet, pathetic fizzle of a family that had been broken for years. On the plane back to London, I watched the American coastline disappear beneath the clouds. I held a check in my bag for an amount that still didn't feel real, but the weight I felt lifting off my shoulders was far more valuable. I was sad for the family I never had, and I was heartbroken for Lee's lonely burden. But for the first time, I felt completely, utterly free. Lee hadn't just left me his money. He had left me his legacy, a life of my own, making far away from the small people who had tried to keep me in the shadows. He told me to go take on the world. And now I finally could.
Story 5.
The arc flash from the TIG welder is a beautiful, violent thing. A miniature star hotter than the surface of the sun, born and dying 1,000 times a second. It's the only place I feel any real sense of peace. Under the helmet, with the hiss of argon gas and the steady hum of the machine, the world just melts away. I ran a final bead down the seam of a custom stainless steel exhaust manifold, the puddle of molten metal following my torch like a loyal dog. Perfect. A stack of dimes, clean and strong. My grandfather taught me this. Not my dad. My dad was busy being 17. My parents were kids when they had me. The classic small-town horror story, captain of the football team, head cheerleader, a bit too much cheap beer in the back of a pickup truck. Boom. Instant family. They weren't ready. They weren't parents. They were children raising a child, and they resented me for it. So I was mostly raised by my grandparents. Their house was my home. My grandpa's garage was my sanctuary. While my parents were out finding themselves, which usually meant working dead-end jobs and fighting in the parking lot of some dive bar, I was learning to wrench. To measure. To build. Grandpa put a tool in my hand before I could properly read. A man who can work with his hands will never go hungry. "Arthur," he'd say, his voice raspy from a lifetime of unfiltered cigarettes. He was right. I was never hungry. My parents, on the other hand, they were always starving for something. Approval, a second chance, a do-over. They got it when I was 12. That's when my sister Chloe was born. By then, Mom and Dad had finally stumbled into their late 20s. They had matching low-level management jobs at a bong box store, a small rented house, and a decade of regret. Chloe was their mulligan, their golden child. The baby they meant times to have. Suddenly they were parents of the year. Everything was for Chloe. T-ball, piano lessons, art classes, gymnastics. You name it, they paid for it. Their entire lives, their entire identities became wrapped up in being Chloe's parents. And I became a piece of furniture. A live-in older brother-shaped appliance they occasionally remembered to acknowledge. I was the inconvenient walking, talking reminder of their teenage mistake. It didn't matter. By the time Chloe was starting kindergarten, I was a junior in high school with a part-time job in a fabrication shop, a job my grandpa got me. I saved every penny. I learned everything I could. When my parents were screaming at each other over which pre-K program had the best creative expression curriculum for their 5-year-old prodigy, I was learning to weld titanium. I left home at 18 and never looked back. I worked, I saved, I built my business from the ground up. With a loan from my grandparents, which I paid back with interest in 3 years. Now, at 28, I own my own custom fab shop. I have a house I bought with cash, a truck that's paid for, and more work than I can handle. I'm not rich, but I'm comfortable. I'm secure. I'm everything my parents never were. The buzz of my phone on the workbench sliced through the quiet hum of the workshop. I killed the welder, flipped up my helmet, and wiped the sweat from my brow. The caller ID flashed times Mom***. A familiar knot tightened in my stomach. They never called just to chat. Hey, I answered my voice flat. Arthur, honey, how are you? Her voice was sickeningly sweet, the one she used when she was about to ask for something. I'm fine, Mom. Working. What's up? Oh, nothing. Just wanted to see how my successful son is doing. Your father and I are so proud of you, you know. I grunted in response, pulling off my gloves. The lie was so practiced, so worn, it was almost comfortable. Listen, she continued, getting to the point. Your father and I were wondering if we could stop by tonight. We have some exciting news about Chloe and, well, we'd like to talk to you about it in person. Exciting news. It's incredible, just life-changing for her. We'll be there around 7. She didn't wait for an answer. The line went dead. I stared at the phone for a long moment, the silence of the garage pressing in. This wasn't just a favor. The in-person visit, the syrupy sweet tone. This was big. This was a 5-alarm fire. They arrived at 7 on the dot, my father awkwardly clutching a 6-pack of beer I wouldn't drink, and my mother carrying a grocery store cake. They walked into my house like tourists, gawking at the clean lines, the solid wood furniture I'd built myself, the general lack of financial chaos they'd lived in their entire lives. Oh, Arthur, this place is just beautiful, my mother gushed, setting the cake on my granite countertop. You've done so well for yourself. It's a good house, my dad added, setting the beer next to the cake. Solid. We engaged in about 10 minutes of excruciating small talk. I offered them a water. They talked about their jobs. I nodded. Then my mom clapped her hands together, a signal that the performance was about to begin. Okay, so our big news, she announced, her eyes sparkling. Chloe has been accepted into the summer intensive program at the Northwood Ballet Academy. I'd heard of it. It was one of those elite, ridiculously expensive camps for serious dancers. Chloe had been doing ballet since she was 3. It was her times thing, asterisk. Or rather, it was my parents' asterisk thing times for her. Wow. That's great, I said, managing a flicker of sincerity. Chloe was a good kid. She deserved good things. It's more than great, Arthur. It's the opportunity of a lifetime, my dad jumped in, leaning forward on the sofa. This is the feeder program for the biggest companies in the country. If she does well here, she's set. A professional career is practically guaranteed. She's so gifted, Mom added, dabbing at a non-existent tear. She's worked so hard for this. She's a star. I took a slow sip of my water, waiting for the other shoe to drop. It was a very expensive shoe. The thing is, son, my mom started, her voice softening, her hands folding in her lap. It's a very prestigious program. And with prestige comes a certain cost. Your father and I have run the numbers. And with the mortgage and our bills, we just can't swing it on our own. Here it comes. My father cleared his throat, sitting up straighter. He put on his serious man face, the one he probably used at work when he had to tell someone they couldn't return an open blender. He looked me dead in the eye, his expression a clumsy mix of pride and desperation. The program costs $20,000, Arthur. We need you to cover it. The silence in the room stretched out thin and fragile. My father's desperate, proud expression froze on his face. My mother's smile faltered, becoming a brittle, painted-on thing. $20,000. Not a loan. A payment. For services not rendered. I didn't blink. I didn't even take a breath. No. The word landed on the coffee table between us with the force of a hammer. Simple. Absolute. My mother flinched as if I'd slapped her. What do you mean, no? She stammered, her voice a wounded whisper. I mean, no, I repeated, keeping my voice level. I'm not giving you $20,000. Arthur, this is for Chloe. My dad cut in, his voice rising, taking on the fake patient tone he used when I was a teenager, and he was pretending to be a parent. This isn't for us. This is for your sister's future. She's so talented, my mom added, her eyes starting to well up. She looks up to you so much. Don't you want to see her succeed? You have more money than you know what to do with? Look at this place. Her hand swept out, gesturing at the walls, the furniture, the life I had built while they were busy with their do-over. I felt a cold laugh building in my chest. It was so perfectly predictably them. They didn't see a life I had built. They saw a resource they could tap. An ATM that happened to be their son. I leaned forward, placing my water glass on a coaster with methodical precision. You know what? You're right, I said, my voice dangerously soft. It's not fair that I don't contribute. So I'll make you a deal. Their faces lit up with a pathetic flicker of hope. I'll write you a check right now, I continued, for the exact amount of money you spent on all of my childhood activities. We can start with my soccer league fees. Then my swim club membership. Oh, and we can't forget the money for my band instrument in middle school. Let's add it all up. I paused, letting them do the math. Letting them remember the endless afternoons I spent in my grandpa's garage because they were never there. What do you think that comes to? All my lessons, all my equipment, all the travel? I let the silence hang in the air for another 3 seconds. That's right, I said, my voice turning to ice. 0. The grand total is 0. So that's my contribution. Nothing. The same thing you gave me. My father's face went from confused to crimson in a heartbeat. Don't be an idiot, Arthur. That was it. The word that broke the dam. All the years of being an afterthought, of being the inconvenient reminder of their failure, it all came rushing out. But not in a shout. In a quiet, brutal wave. An idiot, I looked from his furious face to my mother's tear-streaked one. I'm not the idiot. I'm not the one who was broke at 17 because you couldn't keep your hands off each other. I'm not the one still living paycheck to paycheck 30 years later because you never learned how to manage money. You couldn't afford me then and you can't afford Chloe now. The only thing that's changed is which kid you're failing. The sound my mother made was a choked gasp. My father shot to his feet, knocking his knee on the coffee table. He didn't seem to feel it. You selfish bastard, he spat, his voice thick with rage. After everything we've done for you. The sheer, unadulterated absurdity of that statement almost made me laugh. Everything you've done for me, Grandpa taught me how to work. Grandpa got me my first job. Grandpa co-signed my first business loan. What did you do? You showed up for Christmas with a gift card and acted like you were owed something for the inconvenience of my birth. My mother was openly sobbing now, pulling at my father's arm. Let's go, Bill. Let's just go. He wasn't done. He pointed a trembling finger at me. You'll regret this. When you're all alone in this big empty house, with all your money, you'll regret this. I've been alone my whole life, I said, and the truth of it surprised even me. I'm just not pretending anymore. That finally broke him. He turned, grabbed my mother, and they practically fled from my house. The front door slammed shut, and the silence that followed was heavier than any noise. The store-bought cake and the cheap beer were still sitting on my counter, pathetic monuments to a transaction that never happened. My hands were shaking just slightly. I balled them into fists until my knuckles were white. After a few minutes, I pulled out my phone and dialed the only number I ever called when the world went sideways. He picked up on the second ring. Yeah, Grandpa's voice was gravelly familiar. They came by, I said, no preamble needed. I figured, he grunted. Let me guess. The ballet thing. Yep. They asked for $20,000. A long, weary sigh on the other end of the line. Jesus H. Christ. What'd you tell him? I told them no. Then I told them I'd pay them back for all the money they spent on my childhood activities. A check for $0. There was a pause, and then I heard it, a dry, rasping chuckle. Well, you ain't wrong, but you could have found a nicer way to say it, kid. You got a sharp tongue when you want to use it. He called me an idiot, Grandpa. Yeah, well, he's been a damn fool your whole life, so I wouldn't take it personally. I could hear him shifting the phone. Here, your grandmother wants to talk. Arthur, honey, her voice was softer, laced with concern. Are you all right? I don't know, Grandma. Listen to me, she said, her tone firm. What you said was harsh. It was. But it was the truth. Your grandfather and I, we saw it all. They pawned you off on us every chance they got so they could go be kids. They did nothing for you, Arthur. Nothing. It doesn't give you a right to be cruel, but it damn sure gives you the right to say no. You don't owe them a thing. We talked for a few more minutes, her words, a soothing balm on a raw wound. When I hung up, the house felt a little less empty. They had my back. They always had. I walked over to the counter and picked up the cake. I didn't even open the box before I dropped it into the trash can. I poured the 6 beers down the sink one by one. I know what my grandparents think. And I know my parents will paint me as the villain of this story to anyone who will listen. But standing there in the quiet of my own home, the one I earned, the one I built, I couldn't shake one question that kept circling in my head. They were wrong, but was I right?
Story 6.
It started with 4 words. 4 words that Chloe dropped on me like a bag of rocks during a perfectly normal Tuesday night dinner. I think we're broken, she said, pushing a piece of salmon around her plate. I put my fork down. Broken? What are you talking about? We're fine. No, Thomas. Asterisk. We're times not fine. Asterisk. I'm times not fine. She looked at me, her eyes holding a kind of disappointed exhaustion I'd never seen before. You're just not here. You're not emotionally available. The accusation hit me like a phantom punch. Me, not available. I was the one who planned our dates, who remembered the name of her annoying coworker, who always made sure the coffee was ready in the morning. I was the rock. That was my job. Chloe, that's not fair, I said, my voice softer than I intended. I'm right here. I'm always here. Being physically in the room isn't the same as being present, she sighed, and that was that. The conversation was over. The verdict was in. I was the problem. For the next 2 months, I tried to fix it. I read articles on emotional intimacy. I suggested counseling, which she shot down as too dramatic. I planned a weekend trip to a cabin, just the 2 of us. I left little notes in her work bag. Every effort I made was met with a polite but distant thank you. It was like trying to hug a statue. Then Mark came into the picture. He and his wife were our friends, part of our core group. When they announced their divorce, it was a shock to everyone. Chloe especially took it hard. He's a wreck, Thomas, she told me one night, scrolling through her phone on the couch, a good 6 feet of space between us. He has no one. I'm just going to go have a drink with him, make sure he's okay. I didn't think anything of it. Of course she should. Mark was our friend. Yeah, good idea. Tell him I'm thinking of him. 1 drink turned into 2. A weeknight check-in became a 4-hour vent session. Soon, I'm meeting Mark became a near daily refrain. It was always framed as an act of selfless friendship. She was his lifeline, the only one who truly understood what he was going through. He's just so lost, she'd say when she came home late, smelling of wine and someone else's cigarettes. I'm just helping him. My unease started as a low hum, a barely audible frequency of doubt. I tried to shut it down. She was a good person, a caring friend. I was just being jealous, insecure. I was the broken one, remember? I was the one who wasn't emotionally available. A good husband would be supportive. So I was supportive. How's Mark doing? I'd ask, trying to show I was on the team. Better, she'd say, her thumbs flying across her phone screen. It's a long process. The long process started to include late-night phone calls that she'd take on the porch, weekend afternoons. Spent running errands that somehow always involved a stop at Mark's new apartment. I tried to bring it up gently once. You're spending a lot of time with him, Chloe. Are you sure you're taking care of yourself, too? Her head snapped up from her phone. Are you serious? The man's life just fell apart? I'm being a good friend. Is that a problem for you? No, of course not. Because it sounds like a problem. It sounds like you don't trust me. The accusation hung in the air, thick and suffocating. I trust you, I said, a lie I was desperate to believe. I retreated, I apologized. I was the problem. Again. We had a trip to Patagonia planned for months. 18 months of marriage, and this was our first big adventure. I saw it as our chance. 10 days of hiking in epic landscapes, no Mark, no distractions. A hard reset. I put all my hope into that trip. The week before we were supposed to leave the house felt like a pressure cooker. Chloe was a ghost, flitting from room to room, packing in silence, her phone permanently attached to her hand. She'd angle the screen away from me whenever I walked in. I told myself it was just pre-trip stress. The plan was for her to fly out Tuesday morning. I'd follow on Wednesday after wrapping up a big project at work. We'd meet in Santiago. Tuesday morning came. I got up to make coffee, same as always. She was already dressed, her suitcase by the door. She looked agitated. Hey, I said, trying for a normal smile. Ready for the big trip? Yep, she said, not looking at me, just checking her purse for the third time. Passport, wallet, phone. Okay. My flight gets in at 9 p.m. tomorrow. I'll meet you at the hotel bar. I walked over to hug her, to give her a proper goodbye, a kiss, to launch our great reconnecting adventure. She turned her head so my lips landed on her cheek. It was a cold, stiff, dismissive gesture. She pulled away before I could even fully wrap my arms around her. The Uber's here, she said, grabbing her suitcase. I'll see you there. And she was gone. No, I love you. No, travel safe. Just an abrupt exit that left the front door swinging shut with a hollow click. I stood in the silent hallway, the smell of her perfume hanging in the air. The low hum of doubt I'd been suppressing for months was now a screaming alarm. Something was wrong. Terribly, fundamentally wrong. I spent the rest of the day in a fog trying to focus on work, but replaying that cold goodbye over and over. That night I packed my own bag. I laid out my hiking gear on the bed we shared, and a wave of profound loneliness washed over me. This was supposed to be our trip. Asterisk, our time's bed. What was I even trying to save? I walked into her closet to grab a travel adapter from her suitcase shelf. And there it was. Sitting on her jewelry box, the little black screen dark, was her Apple Watch. She never went anywhere without it. Forgetting it was like forgetting a limb. My heart started hammering against my ribs. Don't do it. Just leave it. It's an invasion of privacy. You're being paranoid. But the cold cheek, the hidden phone screen, the late nights with Mark, it all swirled together into a toxic cocktail of suspicion I could no longer ignore. My hand trembled as I picked it up. I pressed the side button. The screen lit up. A cascade of notifications. All from the same name. Asterisk, asterisk. Mark, asterisk. Asterisk, asterisk. I miss you already. Asterisk. Asterisk, asterisk, Mark. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Can't believe you're really going. This is going to be the longest 10 days of my life. Asterisk. Asterisk, asterisk, Mark. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. I love you so much. Asterisk. Asterisk, asterisk. Mark, asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Just land safely and tell me you're mine. Asterisk. The air left my lungs in a single silent gasp. My vision tunneled. The floor seemed to drop out from under me. I fumbled with the watch, my fingers clumsy and numb, scrolling up, going deeper. It was all there. Hundreds of messages. Pet names. Explicit details of their last meetup. Plans they were making for when she got back. Pictures. A whole secret life lived right under my nose in my own house. A line from her sent just last night while I was sleeping beside her burned itself onto my brain. Asterisk, asterisk, Chloe, asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. I just have to get through this stupid trip. Then I'm all yours. I promise. Asterisk. I sank to the floor, the watch still clutched in my hand, its screen glowing with the evidence of my own stupidity. My lungs burned. My stomach twisted into a knot of ice and acid. I didn't just read the words. I felt them. Each one. A physical blow. Asterisk. I love you so much. Tell me you're mine. Asterisk. My first instinct was primal. I wanted to smash something. To hurl the watch against the wall and watch it shatter into a million pieces, just like my life had. But a cold, terrifying calm washed over me instead. I took a picture of the screen with my phone. Then another. And another. I documented everything, every pet name, every promise, every lie. Then I called her. I knew her plane would have landed in Santiago by now. It rang twice. Hey, you're not going to believe this. The line for customs is insane, she said. Her voice bright and breezy. The voice of a wife on vacation. I said nothing. Thomas, are you there? The connection's terrible. I found your watch, Chloe. The silence on the other end was absolute. It was so complete, I could hear the background chatter of the airport fade away, as if she'd stepped into a soundproof room. Oh, she finally whispered. A single, pathetic syllable. Just land safely and tell me you're mine. I read from my phone, my voice flat dead. I just have to get through this stupid trip. Then I'm all yours. Thomas, I can explain. Can you explain the pictures? Can you explain how you were fucking our friend in our bed while I was at work trying to pay for this stupid trip? The words came out like venom. I felt a wild, unhinged laugh bubble up in my chest. I was losing my mind. It's not what you think, she started the classic insulting line. You've been so distant. So unavailable. Mark was just there. He listened to me. He times me. The gaslighting was so textbook it was almost impressive. She was reading directly from the cheater's handbook. I see you, I said, my voice dropping to a low growl. I see you for exactly what you are. Don't bother coming home. Get a lawyer. I hung up before she could respond. I blocked her number. Then I blocked Mark's. I sat on the floor of her closet for an hour, surrounded by her clothes and her scent, and felt absolutely nothing. I was hollowed out. A shell. That night I didn't sleep. I fell into a Reddit rabbit hole. R. Surviving infidelity. I read hundreds of stories. A Greek chorus of betrayal. The advice was brutal and unanimous. Go, scorched earth. Protect yourself. She is not your friend anymore. The next morning I called a lawyer. A man with a sharp voice and no time for my emotional breakdown. He gave me a checklist. 1. Separate finances. Immediately. 2. Change the locks. 3. Communicate only through lawyers. 4. Get her out of the house. You owned the house before the marriage, he asked. Yes. Good. That makes it easier. It's your primary asset. We protect it at all costs. When Chloe finally got back from Chile a week later, a week I spent living on whiskey and protein bars, the locks were changed. Her suitcases were packed and waiting on the front porch. I watched from the window as she stared at them, her face a mask of disbelief, before she called an Uber defeated. She went to Mark's. Of course she did. A week after that, she started calling from a blocked number. Crying. Apologizing. Begging. She swore it was over with Mark. She said she'd made the biggest mistake of her life. She was lost, confused, broken. She used the words I'd once believed were about me, about times, us times, and weaponized them. And God help me, a part of me listened. The part that still remembered the woman I married, not the monster who'd obliterated my trust. We were 18 months in. Was I really going to throw it all away? Counseling, I said, my voice weak. One chance. We go to counseling and you never speak to him again. Ever. She agreed instantly. Anything, Thomas. I'll do anything. We went to one session. It was a disaster. She cried. I stared at the wall. The therapist used words like communication breakdown and unmet needs. I wanted to scream. I'd had an unmet need for my wife not to screw our friend. That night, Chloe made dinner. She tried to hold my hand. It was a pathetic pantomime of a marriage. She promised me again she hadn't spoken to Mark since she got back. I blocked his number, she said, looking me right in the eye. He doesn't exist to me anymore. The next day, a notification popped up on my phone from our shared banking app. I'd forgotten to remove her. Asterisk, asterisk, $32.50. At the tap room. Asterisk, asterisk. I knew the tap room. It was 2 blocks from Mark's apartment. My heart hammered in my chest. It could be anything. A coincidence. She could be meeting a girlfriend. The excuses my brain tried to manufacture were pathetic. I knew. I just knew. I got in my car. I didn't have a plan. I just drove. I parked across the street, my engine off, feeling like a stalker in my own life. 10 minutes later, they walked out together. She was laughing, her head thrown back in, that way she did when she thought something was hilarious. He put his arm around her waist, pulling her in. She leaned into him, her body fitting against his, as if it were made for it. They didn't kiss. They didn't have to. It was more intimate than a kiss. It was the easy, comfortable body language of a long-term couple. The cold calm was gone. In its place was a rage so pure and white-hot it scorched my insides. I drove home, my hands shaking on the wheel. This was the real end. The final brutal amputation of hope. The weeks that followed were a blur of pain. I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. I paced the empty rooms of my house for hours, screaming into pillows until my throat was raw. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat. The image of her laughing with him burned into my mind. The divorce proceedings stalled. She refused to sign anything, refused to engage with my lawyer's settlement offer. She was trying to bleed me dry to drag it out. One day, pacing the living room, I stared at the half-painted wall we were supposed to finish together. I picked up the roller and I finished it. The next day, I tore out the old backsplash in the kitchen. I channeled every ounce of rage and grief into ripping my house apart and putting it back together better. Stronger. I worked until my hands were raw and my muscles screamed, because physical pain was a welcome distraction from the inferno in my head. I canceled our Patagonia flights and booked a solo trip to Colorado. I hiked until my legs gave out, standing on top of a mountain, gasping in the thin air, feeling utterly alone, and yet for the first time in months feeling a flicker of something other than pain. It was just quiet. The healing is not linear. It's a messy, brutal slog. Most days are still hard. I see a couple holding hands and I feel a pang of phantom limb pain. The loneliness at night can be a physical weight. But I keep going. I lean on the faceless strangers on Reddit, my tribe of the betrayed. They get it. They don't offer platitudes, they offer grim understanding. She's gone. The woman I loved, the woman I built a life with, was an illusion. Accepting that is the hardest part. She wasn't stolen from me. She didn't exist in the first place. All that's left now is me, this house I'm slowly rebuilding, and the long open road ahead.
Story 7.
My apartment is my masterpiece. It's not much, a 400 square foot box with a kitchen the size of a closet, but it's mine. I found it for a steal, a little rent-controlled gem my friends are still jealous of. I spent months turning it into a home. I painted the walls a soft sage green, strung fairy lights around the window, and filled it with thrifted furniture. I painstakingly sanded and refinished myself. It was my sanctuary, the one place in the world that was entirely, unequivocally mine. Then my brother Mark decided it was also his. It started small. Mark is 32, 9 years older than me, and still lives in his childhood bedroom at our parents' house. He'd just started a new job working a night shift at a warehouse an hour away. "Hey Vic," he texted one morning. "Mind if I crash on your couch for a bit? The drive back is brutal when I'm this tired." What was I supposed to say? No, so I said yes. He came over, slept for 5 hours, and left. No big deal. But a week later, it was the same request. And then again. Soon crashing for a bit became a 3 days a week habit. I gave him a key because I was tired of getting buzzed at 7 in the morning. I thought it was a gesture of trust. For him, it was an invitation. The first real sign of the invasion was the PlayStation. I came home from work one Tuesday to find it squatting under my TV, a tangle of black cables snaking behind my carefully organized media console. "What's this?" I asked, pointing at it. Mark was already on the couch, controller in hand. He didn't look up. Easier than lugging it back and forth. "You don't mind, right?" It wasn't a question. I did mind. I minded a lot. But I swallowed the protest. I didn't want to be the difficult sister. That was my fatal mistake. The PlayStation was the Trojan horse. Once it was inside, the rest of his army followed. A duffel bag of clothes appeared in my closet. His massive stinking work boots were permanently parked by the door, tripping me every time I came in. The bathroom counter, once neatly arranged with my things, was now a chaotic landscape of his deodorant, shaving cream, and a perpetually damp towel slung over the door. He never paid for anything. He'd drink my coffee, eat my food, use my Wi-Fi, and finish my toilet paper without ever replacing it. My electric bill mysteriously doubled. He was a ghost who paid no rent but left a very real, very greasy mess. I started to feel less like a homeowner and more like a live-in maid. I'd come home from a long day to find a sink full of crusty bowls caked with old cereal milk and his dirty work clothes balled up on my bedroom floor. "Mark, can you please clean up after yourself?" I'd ask, trying to keep the exhaustion out of my voice. Yeah, I'll get to it," he'd grunt, eyes glued to the TV screen where he was gunning down zombies. He never got to it. The final straw was the night I came home to find him and 2 of his friends on my couch, surrounded by empty pizza boxes and beer bottles. The entire apartment reeked of stale beer and dude. They were screaming at the game, and my cat, Nimbus, was hiding under my bed, terrified. "What is this?" I snapped, dropping my purse on the floor. Mark finally looked at me, a flicker of annoyance in his eyes. "What? We're just chillin'." "This is my apartment, Mark, not a frat house. You can't just have people over without asking me." He actually rolled his eyes. Relax, Vic. It's not a big deal. That was it. I was done. The next morning, I called my parents. I was shaking with a mixture of anger and anxiety. I just wanted some backup. I wanted them to be parents to talk to their son and tell him to respect my home. Mom answered. I laid it all out for her, the mess, the noise, the disrespect, the friends. I could hear her sighing through the phone. Oh, honey, you know how he is, she said, her voice dripping with practice weariness. Just try to be patient with him. Patient, Mom. He's treating my home like his personal flop house. He needs to go. Hold on, let me put your father on. I heard muffled talking, and then my dad's voice calm and reasonable. That's his signature move. The voice of reason that makes you feel like you're the crazy one. Victoria, he started. Your mother told me what's going on. And we've actually been talking. We have an idea. I felt a surge of relief. Finally. Okay. Well, he said, drawing the word out. Mark really likes your little place. And the rent is so cheap. You've done so well for yourself, sweetie. You've got that great job. You're so responsible. A cold dread began to pool in my stomach. I knew where this was going. What are you saying, Dad? We were thinking, since you're so much more established, maybe you could find a new place, something a little nicer, and Mark could just take over your lease. The phone felt slick in my hand. I couldn't have heard him right. You want me to move out of my own apartment? It just makes sense, he said, his voice becoming more animated, like he was selling me a used car. Mark's struggling. He needs a leg up. You're strong. You can handle a little bit of a rent increase. It would be a huge favor to him. And frankly, a huge favor to us. It's time he was out of our house. I was speechless. The silence stretched. He had just admitted it. This wasn't about helping Mark. This was about solving their problem. I was just a convenient, disposable tool. So you want to make me homeless so you can get rid of my brother. My voice was dangerously quiet. Don't be so dramatic, Victoria, he scoffed. You wouldn't be homeless. You'd find another place. You're the golden child. You always land on your feet. He doesn't. This is a chance for you to help your family. My family. He meant help him and Mom get their empty nest back. He meant sacrifice my home, my peace, my financial stability, which I had worked my ass off for, all so they could wash their hands of the 32-year-old man-child they'd created. I was being punished for my success. No, I said. The word felt solid heavy. Absolutely not. Victoria, don't be selfish. I hung up. My hands were trembling. My sanctuary, my home felt tainted. It wasn't just Mark's mess anymore. It was the scene of my family's utter betrayal. Furious and needing to know I wasn't insane, I typed out the whole story on a Reddit forum. The anonymous rage of the internet was a balm. Hundreds of comments flooded in within an hour. Asterisk, change the locks. Asterisk, asterisk, he's a squatter. Asterisk, asterisk, your parents are the real villains here. Asterisk, asterisk, you are not their doormat. Asterisk. Something inside me snapped into place. The hurt and confusion hardened into pure cold resolve. They wanted me to be the bad guy. Fine. I grabbed a box of black trash bags from under the sink. I marched into the living room and ripped the PlayStation's cords from the back of my TV. I shoved it into the first bag. The controllers went in next. Then the mess of games. I moved through the apartment like a storm gathering, every single thing that belonged to him, the dirty clothes, the toiletries, the stinking boots. It all went into the bags. I dragged the 5 heavy bags and piled them by the front door. I looked around my apartment. It was mine again. The air already felt lighter. My phone buzzed. A text from Mark. Asterisk. Shift's over. Be there in 20. Order a pizza. Asterisk. I sat on my couch, my heart hammering against my ribs, and stared at the door. I waited. The sound of his key scraping in the lock was the loudest thing I had ever heard. The door swung open, and Mark filled the frame, smelling of sweat and warehouse dust. He blinked his eyes, adjusting to the light. He saw the black trash bags first, a mountain of them blocking the entryway. "What the hell?" he mumbled, dropping his own duffel bag. "Did you clean?" "In a way," I said, my voice steady. I was standing by the couch, arms crossed. "That's your stuff. You need to take it and leave." He stared at the bags, then at me. A slow, incredulous smile spread across his face. "Huh, very funny, Vic. I'm exhausted. Move this crap so I can get in." He tried to shoulder his way past me. I didn't move. I planted my feet and held my ground. "I'm not joking, Mark. You're out. Tonight." His smile vanished. "What are you talking about? I live here." "No, you don't," I said, the words coming out colder and harder than I expected. "You crash here. You eat my food, you use my power, you make a mess, and you don't pay a dime. This isn't your home. It's mine. And your stay is over." His face contorted with anger. "You can't just kick me out," Dad told me about the plan. "You're supposed to be finding a new place so I can take this one. Don't be a bitch about it." There it was. The casual, entitled confirmation that I was just a stepping stone for him, a problem to be solved for them. The last bit of familial softness in me evaporated. "There is no plan," I spat. "That was Dad's delusional fantasy to get you out of his house. This is my apartment. Mine. And you are trespassing." I grabbed the top bag, the one with his stupid PlayStation in it, and shoved it out the door into the hallway. It landed with a heavy plastic thud. "What the fuck?" he roared, lunging for it. I was already on the next bag, shoving his stinking work clothes out after it. He grabbed my arm, his fingers digging into my bicep. "Stop it. What is wrong with you?" I wrenched my arm free. "What's wrong with me? What's wrong with you? You're 32 years old, Mark. Get your own life and get the hell out of mine." It was ugly. We were screaming at each other in the doorway, my voice hoarse, his face purple with rage. He called me selfish. He called me an ungrateful brat. He said I always got everything I wanted. I laughed in his face, a raw, bitter sound. "I got this because I worked for it," I yelled, shoving the last bag of his junk into the hall. "Something you wouldn't know anything about." He stood there panting, surrounded by the garbage bags that held his transient existence. Defeated. He knew he'd lost. "Fine," he sneered. "Fine. I don't want to live in this shithole anyway." "Good." I held out my hand, palm up. "The key." He scoffed. "Forget it. Give me my key, Mark. Or I'll call the cops and have you removed for trespassing. Don't test me." I stared him down, pouring every ounce of fury and betrayal into my eyes. I wasn't his little sister anymore. I was a stranger. He stared back for a long, tense moment before reaching into his pocket. He didn't hand it to me. He threw it on the floor in the hallway where it skittered under one of the bags. "Happy now," he snarled. "Ecstatic," I said, and slammed the door in his face. I twisted the deadbolt, the click echoing in the sudden deafening silence. My legs felt like jelly. I slid down the door to the floor, my whole body trembling. I waited, listening to him curse and kick the bags before finally stomping away down the hall. And then nothing. It was over. I sat there for a long time, just breathing in the quiet air of my own apartment. I got up, picked up the empty pizza boxes and beer bottles he and his friends had left, and put them in the trash. I wiped down the counters. I opened a window, letting the cool night air chase out the last lingering scent of him. Nimbus, my cat, crept out from under the bed and cautiously rubbed against my leg, purring. I picked him up and buried my face in his fur. It was really mine again. The peace lasted exactly 47 minutes. My phone rang, flashing Mom on the screen. I took a deep breath and answered. Victoria, what have you done? Her voice was shrill, panicked. Mark just called me from the car. He's beside himself. He said you threw him out on the street. I asked him to leave my apartment, I said calmly. His things are in the hallway. He can take them back to his room at your house. His room, Victoria, the whole point was to get him times of his room. We had a plan A, perfectly reasonable solution that would have helped everyone. My blood ran cold. The sheer unadulterated selfishness of it still shocked me. Helped everyone? You mean it would have helped you and Dad? It would have cost me my home, my savings, and my sanity, but hey, at least you'd get your empty nest back, right? Don't you use that tone with me, she snapped. You're the one with the good job. You're the one who can afford it. It's your responsibility to help your family, to help your less fortunate brother. Less fortunate, or just coddled into incompetence. I was done being quiet. I was done being the good daughter. He's a 32-year-old man, Mom. My success isn't a slush fund for his failures. My stability isn't a resource for you to exploit for your own convenience. A choked silence on the other end. I don't know who this person is, she finally whispered, her voice thick with theatrical disappointment. This cold, selfish person. Your father was right. You've changed. Yeah, I have, I said, a strange sense of calm washing over me. It was the calm of a final decision. I'm no longer the family doormat. You all made it very clear that my happiness is disposable. So I'm disposing of the arrangement. What does that mean? She asked, her voice sharp with alarm. It means I need space. A lot of it. Don't call me, don't text me. I'll reach out when and if I'm ready. Victoria, you can't be serious. We're your family. I hung up. I blocked her number. Then I blocked Dad's. Then Mark's. I looked around my little 400 square foot box. The sage green walls. The fairy lights. The thrifted furniture I'd poured my heart into. It was a battlefield, and I was the only one left standing. I had won back my sanctuary. The cost was the family I thought I had, but I was beginning to realize you can't lose something that was never really there for you in the first place.
Story 8.
My dad sent me to therapy when I was 12. Not because I was lighting fires or torturing squirrels, but because I wasn't adjusting. That was his word for it. Adjusting. Adjusting to the fact that my mom was dead and he had a new wife, Linda, and 2 new kids that weren't my mom's. Adjusting to a life that felt like a cheap knockoff of my old one. Dr. Sharma's going to help you, Owen, he'd said, his hand heavy on my shoulder in the waiting room. We just want our happy boy back. He didn't want times me times back. He wanted a version of me that would fit neatly into the family photo he was trying to stage. Dr. Sharma was different. She had kind eyes and didn't push. In her second session, she slid a black, hardcover notebook across the table. This is for you, she said. A place for the feelings you can't say out loud. The big, ugly, messy ones. No one ever has to see it but you. It's a pressure valve. Use it. So I did. I filled that journal with everything. It was a sewer of unfiltered 12-year-old grief and rage. Asterisk. I miss Mom so much it feels like my bones are breaking. Asterisk. Asterisk. Linda tried to make Mom's casserole tonight. It tasted like sadness. I wish she'd just stop trying to replace her. Asterisk. Asterisk. Ben and Chloe are so loud. They're always screaming or crying or needing something. Dad looks at them like they're miracles. He used to look at me that way. Asterisk. Asterisk, I wish it was just me and Dad again. Before all of this. I wish they'd all just go away. Asterisk. For 5 years, that journal was my silent accomplice. It absorbed every toxic thought, every unfair accusation, every selfish wish my grieving brain could cook up. It was ugly, but it was honest. And it was private. Then, a few weeks after my 17th birthday, I was cleaning out my closet and found it wedged behind a stack of old yearbooks. I blew the dust off and flipped through the pages. The handwriting was a childish scrawl, the feelings so raw they were almost foreign. I didn't recognize the kid who wrote those things. Not really. I'd said my piece. I'd done the work. I was better. Holding it felt like holding onto the ghost of a person I didn't want to be anymore. So I did the most liberating thing I could think of. I walked over to the trash can in my room, dropped the journal inside, and covered it with a pile of old magazines. A burial. It was over. The next day, I took my trash down to the kitchen to dump it in the big bin, the one that gets rolled out to the curb. It was a Tuesday. Trash day. That should have been the end of it. A week later, the air in the house changed. It started with Linda. The way she looked at me, her smile usually plastered on so tight I thought it might crack, her face was gone. Now, when she passed me the salt at dinner, her fingers flinched away if they brushed mine. Her eyes would skim over me full of a kind of clinical disgust, like she'd just found a roach in the silverware drawer. Then my dad started. He'd watch me from his armchair while I did my homework at the kitchen table. Not saying anything. Just watching his jaw set a muscle twitching in his cheek. The silence was louder than any argument we'd ever had. It was heavy and sharp, and it made the hair on my arms stand up. He was judging me for a crime I didn't know I'd committed. I thought maybe I'd failed a test or they'd found a vape pen in my jacket. Normal teenage stuff. I kept my head down, figuring it would blow over. It didn't. I came home from school on a Thursday. The house was dead quiet. Usually when I got home, Ben and Chloe would be running around the living room, a tornado of cartoons and goldfish crackers. Ben was 10, now Chloe 8. They were the constant background noise of my life. But today there was nothing. Just a thick, humming silence. That felt wrong. "Hello," I called out, dropping my backpack by the door. No answer. I walked toward the living room. The silence got louder somehow. I rounded the corner and froze in the doorway. They were there. On the floor. Chloe was curled into a little ball, her shoulders shaking with silent, heaving sobs. Ben was sitting ramrod straight beside her, his arms wrapped around his knees. His face, usually open and goofy, was a tight, pale mask of absolute hatred. It was an adult's expression on a child's face, and it was aimed directly at me. And there on the floor between them, splayed open like a victim in a crime scene photo, was the black journal. My journal. The one I had thrown in the trash. My blood turned to ice water. The room tilted. It was open to a page near the middle. I couldn't make out the words from the doorway, but I didn't need to. I knew every ugly sentence I'd ever written in there. I knew the kind of poison a grieving 12-year-old could spill onto a page. I took a step into the room, my throat closing up. "What's going on?" My voice was a useless croak. Ben's head snapped up. His eyes were red-rimmed, but his glare was bone-dry and full of razor blades. He didn't yell. He didn't scream. He said it in a low, trembling voice that cut me deeper than any shout ever could. "You wrote that you wished we were never born." The words hung in the air, thick and suffocating. My gaze flicked from Ben's hateful face to Chloe's, shuddering back then to the open journal. My journal. My gut twisted into a cold, hard knot. "Where did you get that?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "We found it," Ben spat, his little jaw set with a man's fury. I knew he was lying. Kids like that don't go digging through the main house trash bin. This was a setup, an execution. Right on cue, footsteps patted on the hardwood behind me. I didn't have to turn around. I could feel the self-righteous heat radiating off of them. "Owen," my dad said. It wasn't a question, it was a verdict. I finally turned. He and Linda stood in the archway, a united front of parental disappointment. Linda's arms were crossed, her face a mask of wounded martyrdom. My dad held my gaze his own, filled with a hard, unfamiliar anger. "You took it out of the trash," I said, the accusation flat and dead. "You went through my garbage." "Don't you dare try to turn this around on me," he shot back, his voice rising. He took a step into the room, pointing a trembling finger at the journal. "We're not talking about trash. We're talking about this. This. Filth." That was my Times Therapy Journal Times. I choked out the words, feeling pathetic and weak, even as I said them. Dr. Sharma gave it to me. It was private. It was for getting things out so I didn't have to feel them anymore. It wasn't for you. It wasn't for any times of you. Linda let out a sound like a punctured tire. "Oh, Owen. How can you say that, asterisk? I wish she'd just stop trying to replace her." Asterisk, I read that. "I was trying to make you feel at home. I loved you like you were my own son." "You were 12 when you wrote some of this," my dad continued, speaking over her as if she wasn't even there, his eyes locked on mine. "He was the prosecutor. But you were 16 writing the rest. You weren't a baby." Asterisk. Dad looks at them like they're miracles. He used to look at me that way. Asterisk. Do you have any idea how that feels to read, Owen? To know my own son resents his brother and sister for just being alive? He was weaponizing every raw, unprocessed thought, twisting the pain of a grieving kid into a deliberate, malicious attack. "That's not what I meant," I yelled, my voice cracking. "I was hurting. Mom was gone. My entire life fell apart, and you just wanted me to smile for a new family photo. That journal was the only place I could be angry about it." "So you were acting," he roared, taking another step closer. Ben and Chloe flinched. "I paid for 5 years of therapy. I listened to Dr. Sharma tell me to be patient, to give you space." "Also, you could do what? Act the part of a decent son while you were secretly writing that you wished we'd all just go away." "You left it for them to find," I said, my voice dropping again, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. The quiet of the house, the kids on the floor, the open book. It was all theater. You dug it out of the trash, you and Linda read it, and then you left it on the living room floor for them to find. You did that on purpose. My dad's face went white. I had him. For a split second, a flicker of guilt crossed his eyes. But it vanished as quickly as it came, replaced by an even harder righteousness. "They needed to know," he said, his voice low and venomous. "They needed to know who they were really living with." That was it. That was the moment my love for him died. It just stopped. The connection, the sense of obligation, the memory of the man who taught me to ride a bike, it all just evaporated, leaving a cold, empty space in my chest. He wasn't my father anymore. He was just their protector. And I was the threat he was protecting them from. I looked from his face to Linda's, then to the two kids on the floor who were now staring at me like I was a monster from a storybook. He'd won. He'd successfully painted me as the villain in our broken little fairy tale. I didn't say another word. I turned, walked past them without looking, and went up the stairs to my room. I closed the door, but I didn't lock it. There was no point. Privacy was an illusion in this house. I sat on my bed for a long time, listening to their murmurs downstairs. The sounds of him and Linda comforting Ben and Chloe. The sound of my family reforming in my absence, bonding over my betrayal. My phone buzzed. It was a text from my dad. Asterisk, we will talk about this tomorrow. Your attitude needs to change. Asterisk. I laughed. a hollow, empty sound. He still thought he had a son he could lecture. He had no idea he'd just orphaned himself. The rage came then. It was a cold, clean rage. Not the messy, grieving kind I'd poured into that journal. This was adult. It was focused. He had taken my past and used it to destroy my present. He had violated my trust in the most intimate way possible. He wanted a perfect family photo. I'd give him one. I waited until I heard his heavy footsteps go up to the master bedroom, until the house fell into a deep, settled quiet. Then I moved. I slipped out of my room and went to the hall closet. On the top shelf behind a stack of old towels was a shoebox. My mom's shoebox. It was full of photos that didn't fit the new narrative. Photos of the three of us at the beach, my dad holding me on his shoulders. A Christmas picture of my mom in a goofy reindeer sweater kissing my cheek. Our real life, the one he'd buried. I took the box and went downstairs. The living room was a museum of their new life. On the mantel, a professional portrait, Dad, Linda, Ben, Chloe, all smiling in matching blue sweaters. On the end tables, framed snapshots from Disney World from Ben's first soccer game. My revenge wasn't going to be loud. It was going to be an erasure. Methodically, I began to work. I pulled the smiling portrait from its frame. I slid it into my back pocket and replaced it with a photo of my mom smiling radiantly holding a 6-year-old me at a birthday party. I moved to the end tables. The Disney photo came out. In went one of me and Dad years ago, grinning with a string of fish we'd caught at the lake. The soccer photo came out. In went one of just my mom looking young and beautiful the way he never seemed to remember her anymore. I went through the entire downstairs. Every single picture of Linda, Ben, or Chloe that was on display I removed. I replaced each one with a ghost from the shoebox. I turned his carefully curated shrine to his new life into a memorial of the one he threw away. When I was done, the room felt different. It felt honest. It was haunted, and it was true. I took the stack of photos I'd removed the evidence of his new family, and I laid them neatly on the kitchen counter right next to my house key. On top, I placed the black journal. Open to the very first page where Dr. Sharma had written in her elegant script, Times. For Owen's eyes only, asterisk. Then I grabbed the backpack I'd already packed, walked out the front door, and didn't look back. I knew what he would find in the morning. He would see a house full of the woman he'd promised to never forget and the son he had just lost forever. He wanted to weaponize my past. Fine. I would leave him to be haunted by his.
Story 9.
The first time I saw my husband Mark hold our daughter, the whole world just stopped. It was like a shutter clicked and the moment was frozen in amber. All the years of trying the doctors, the quiet disappointments, it all melted away. There was just him, a man completely undone by a tiny 7-pound miracle with a tuft of dark hair just like his. We named her Calla. It was the only name we'd ever seriously considered. Mark's mother, who passed away from cancer when he was 15, had loved calla lilies. He told me how she'd always kept a vase of them on the kitchen table, their elegant white heads, a permanent fixture of his childhood. The name felt right. It felt like a piece of her, a connection for the daughter she'd never get to meet. We were in our little bubble of bliss, a cocoon of sleepless nights and milky baby smells. After a couple of days, Mark made the round of announcement calls. He was glowing when he dialed his dad, Robert. "Hey, Dad, she's here," he beamed his voice, thick with emotion. I watched him from the hospital bed holding our tiny girl against my chest. He relayed the stats, time of birth, weight, length. Then he got to the best part. We named her Calla. There was a pause. Even from across the room, I could hear the tinny distant sound of his father's voice, but not the words. Mark's smile faltered just for a second. "Yeah, Calla," he repeated. Another pause. No, it's Calla. Like the flower. His shoulders tensed. He turned away from me slightly, a reflexive habit he had when dealing with his family. Okay, Dad. Yeah, we'll talk soon. Love you. He hung up and forced a smile back onto his face, but the light in his eyes had dimmed. What'd he say? I asked, adjusting Kala in my arms. Mark shrugged, running a hand through his already messy hair. He just said it was an odd choice. Odd. His word. He looked down at our daughter, his expression softening again. He doesn't get it. It's fine. But I knew it wasn't his dad he was talking about. It was his stepmother, Susan. Robert was just the mouthpiece. Susan had been in Mark's life for 20 years, but she was never Mom. She was a constant, simmering presence who resented the ghost of the woman she could never replace, a resentment that often spilled over onto the son, who was a living reminder of that woman. Mark had always been polite, had always shown up for holidays, but he'd kept a careful, measured distance. I knew she hated him for it. The first few months were a blur. Kala grew. She developed a gummy smile that could level a city block and a laugh that sounded like tiny bells. The oddness from the in-laws continued. A baby blanket arrived in the mail addressed to Mark and Elizabeth's new baby. No name. During a strained video call, Susan commented on a picture of Kala I had posted. She's cute, she'd said, her smile tight. Though I never understood why people choose such unusual names these days. Mark just grunted and changed the subject. We tried to ignore it. We were new parents, high on love and low on sleep, and we didn't have the energy for drama. We had our perfect little girl, our Kala. That's all that mattered. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon, 3 months later, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. Mark was working from his home office, and I was on the living room floor, trying to coax a giggle out of Kala during tummy time. I scooped her up, her warm little body molding against my shoulder, and went to the door. It was Robert and Susan. My stomach dropped. They never visited unannounced. They lived 2 hours away and always insisted on a scheduled, almost formal invitation. Susan, Robert, what a surprise, I said, trying to inject some warmth into my voice. We were in the area, Robert said a little too quickly. Susan just stared at me, her eyes flicking down to Kala and then back up, her expression unreadable. Well, come in, come in. I stepped back and they entered. The air in the house immediately felt heavier, thicker. I called for Mark and he came out of the office, his face a mask of confusion that quickly morphed into weary resignation when he saw who was standing in our entryway. The small talk was excruciating. Robert asked Mark about work. I offered them drinks they didn't want. Susan accepted my offer to hold Kala, but she held her stiffly like she was a porcelain doll she was afraid of breaking. She didn't coo or smile at her. She just held her. We all migrated to the living room and sat in a tense, awkward silence. Finally, Robert cleared his throat. It was the signal. Susan looked up from Kala, her gaze landing squarely on Mark. Her face was a carefully constructed portrait of grievance. Mark, she began, her voice quivering just enough to signal the performance had begun. Your father and I have been doing a lot of talking. Mark waited, his posture rigid. We didn't want to say anything at first, she continued, her voice gaining strength. We wanted to give you time. But we simply cannot stay silent about how hurt we are. I felt a cold dread creep up my spine. Heard about what, Susan? I asked, keeping my tone level. She ignored me, her eyes still locked on my husband. It was a terrible thing to do, Mark. Truly terrible. She finally looked at me, then back at him. To choose a name that is a constant, painful reminder. A reminder every single day that I am not her. Her voice cracked on the last word. She clutched Kala a little tighter. Every time I hear you say it, every time I see it written down, it's a slap in the face. It tells me that I'll never be the real grandmother. That I'm just the replacement. Mark was completely white. He looked like he'd been punched in the gut, the air knocked clean out of him. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. He just stared at her, his eyes wide with a disbelieving sort of pain I'd never seen before. Susan took his silence as an invitation to press on, her voice rising with righteous indignation. We are your parents. You are supposed to consider our feelings. You should have thought about how this would make times me times feel before you saddled this poor child with that name. The words hung in the air thick and suffocating. Saddled this poor child with that name. Something inside me snapped. A cold, quiet rage I hadn't felt since Calla was born. I stood up from the couch, my movements slow and deliberate. Give me my daughter, I said. My voice was low, devoid of any warmth. Susan flinched her grip on Calla, tightening for a fraction of a second before she seemed to realize how it looked. She reluctantly passed my baby back into my arms. Calla stirred her tiny face, scrunching up before settling against my shoulder. The familiar weight of her was an anchor in the storm that had just broken in my living room. I looked at Mark. He was frozen, his face a mess of shock and a deep 20-year-old hurt. He looked like that 15-year-old boy again, the one who'd lost his mom and had this woman foisted upon him. Seeing him so broken, so silenced, lit the final fuse. I turned my gaze to Susan. Her name is Calla, I said, my voice cutting through the tension. It's a beautiful name. It honors a beautiful woman who is gone. A woman who is Mark's mother and Calla's grandmother. Susan opened her mouth, a retort ready, but I didn't let her speak. You don't get to be hurt by that. You don't get to be the victim here. For 20 years you have wanted Mark to erase his mother for your comfort, and he has been nothing but polite to you in the face of it. But that stops now. I took a step closer, my protective instinct screaming. This is our daughter. Not a prop in your drama. You can't live in this fantasy world where Mark's mother didn't exist. She did. And she is a part of this family. She is a part of Calla. My voice was shaking, but not from fear. You do not get a say in our child's name. You do not get to come into our home unannounced and tell my husband he was terrible for loving his own mother. You are Calla's grandmother, yes. But you are not his mom. And you need to accept that. The silence that followed was absolute. Susan's face had crumpled from righteous indignation into pure, venomous fury. Robert, who had been a silent statue, finally surged to his feet. How dare you, he boomed, his face turning a blotchy red. How dare you speak to my wife that way in your own home? After everything she's done for Mark. What has she done? Mark's voice, raw and cracked, cut his father off. He finally stood up, his eyes locked on Robert. Been there, physically, Dad. She's resented me since the day you got married. She's resented my mom. And now you're sitting here letting her attack my wife and my daughter over a name. She had a right to her feelings, Robert shot back. She doesn't have a right to our child, Mark said, his voice gaining strength. He walked over to the front door and opened it. I think you should go. Susan gasped, clutching her chest as if she'd been stabbed. After all this time, this is how you treat us, because of a name. You are cruel, Mark. Both of you are so unbelievably cruel. She started crying, then big theatrical sobs. We demand an apology. I just stared at her, rocking Calla gently. An apology. The audacity was breathtaking. Get out, Mark said, his voice flat and final. Robert shot us one last look of pure disgust, then guided his weeping wife out the door, slamming it behind them. The silence they left behind was deafening. I sank back onto the couch, my legs suddenly weak. Calla was still asleep on my shoulder, oblivious. I looked at Mark. He was leaning against the closed door, his head bowed, his shoulders shaking. I thought he was crying. I went to him, my heart aching, and put a hand on his back. He looked up, and his eyes were wet, but he was smiling. A shaky, broken, but genuine smile. Thank you, he whispered, his voice thick. Liz, thank you. I've wanted to say something like that to her for 20 years. I could never find the words. I always froze. He reached out and cut my cheek, his thumb stroking my skin. You didn't freeze. I'm sorry if I went too far, I said, the adrenaline starting to fade, replaced by a wave of queasy guilt. The things I'd said, they were true, but they were so harsh. It just came out. I saw your face and I... Don't you dare be sorry, he said fiercely, pulling me into a one-armed hug, careful of Calla between us. You weren't harsh. You were honest. You defended me. You defended our daughter. He kissed my forehead. You were perfect. His words were a balm, but a little seed of doubt remained. Had I just permanently fractured his family? The weeks that followed were silent. No calls. No texts. Not even a passive-aggressive email from Robert. It was peaceful, but an uneasy peace. Then a package arrived. A small flat box addressed to me and Mark. Inside was a silver picture frame engraved with the words, "Our granddaughter." Tucked into the frame wasn't a photo, but a gift certificate for a professional baby portrait studio. A note from Susan was attached. Thought this would be a lovely way to have a proper picture of the baby, it read. Perhaps we can put all this ugliness behind us and start fresh. For her sake. The baby. She still wouldn't use her name. It wasn't an olive branch. It was a final subtle attempt to win. To erase Calla and replace it with granddaughter. I looked at the frame. I looked at the note. Mark read it over my shoulder and sighed a long, tired sound. Just throw it out, he said. It's not worth it. But it was. I had an idea. It wasn't about being cruel. It wasn't about revenge. It was about ending it for good. The next Saturday, I told Mark I was running some errands. I took the gift certificate. I also took the old, slightly faded photograph of Mark's mother that he kept on his nightstand, the one from her wedding day where she's laughing, her head thrown back in joy. I went to the portrait studio. I also went to a custom frame shop. A week later, on a quiet Tuesday afternoon, almost identical to the one they'd ambushed us on, I hung our new art piece in the living room right across from the couch where they had sat. It was a large, beautifully matted triptych. On the left was the restored, vibrant photo of Mark's mother looking timelessly beautiful. On the right was a photo of Mark and me from the day we brought Calla home, exhausted and utterly besotted. And in the center, and the largest frame of the three, was a gorgeous professional portrait of our daughter. She was awake, her dark eyes sparkling, her gummy smile on full display. Beneath her picture, I'd had a small, elegant brass plate engraved. It read, Calla, named in loving memory of her grandmother. When Mark came home and saw it, he just stopped and stared. He walked over to it, his fingers tracing the frame around his mother's face, then his daughter's. He didn't say anything for a long time. He just looked at it. Finally, he turned to me, his eyes shining. This is our family, he said, his voice full of a quiet, settled peace I hadn't heard in years. All of it. Later that night, I took a photo of the triptych hanging on our wall. I posted it online. I didn't tag anyone. The caption was simple. So proud of our beautiful girl Calla and the legacy she carries. We never got an apology. We didn't need one. The silence from them continued, but this time it wasn't uneasy. It was just quiet. We had taken back our story. We had honored our daughter. And in our home, surrounded by the faces of the people who truly loved her, there were no more ghosts.
Story Teen.
My sister Summer died 2 years before I was born. I don't mean that as some poetic opening line. It's a fact, a piece of family trivia that has defined every single day of my life. Summer was the firstborn, the perfect baby, who lived for 6 short, beautiful months before Sid stole her from my parents. Then I came along, the replacement daughter. They never said it, of course. But they didn't have to. Every birthday cake I ever had was shared with a ghost. Oh, Summer would have loved chocolate cake. My mom would whisper a single tear tracing a path through her makeup. When I graduated high school, my dad hugged me and said Summer would have been so proud of her little sister. I wasn't just Kathleen. I was Kathleen, the sister of Summer. The one who lived. It was suffocating. I spent my whole life trying to be twice as good, twice as happy to make up for the daughter they lost. I felt like a placeholder, a constant walking reminder of their grief. So when my husband Kayla and I found out we were having a girl, a fierce protective feeling washed over me. This baby times my times baby would be her own person. She would never have to compete with a memory. We were at my parents' house for Sunday dinner when we told them. My mom burst into tears, the happy kind for once, and my dad clapped Kale on the back, his face beaming. A little girl, my mom sobbed, clutching my hand. Oh, I'm just so happy. We ate, we talked about names, and I carefully steered the conversation away from anything, starting with an S. Then, as Kale and I were getting our coats, my mom put a hand on my swollen stomach. Her eyes had that faraway look I knew so well. You know, she said softly, her voice thick with emotion. We were always so sad we never got to see our Summer grow up. I froze. I knew where this was going. Maybe now she looked from me to Kale, her eyes pleading, we can. Before I could even form a word, before I could gently explain why that was impossible, Kale grinned. He wrapped an arm around my shoulders and squeezed. Summer, he said, testing the name out. I love it, Carol. It's beautiful. He looked down at me, his eyes shining, completely oblivious to the panic seizing my lungs. What do you think, Cat Summer? Our little Summer... My mom was crying again. My dad was nodding, a solemn, grateful look on his face. It was done. The decision was made. 3 against 1, and I hadn't even said a word. The car ride home was silent. Kale had the radio on, humming along to some pop song while my stomach twisted into a knot so tight I thought I might be sick. The moment we walked through the front door, I turned on him. You can't have been serious. He looked baffled. Serious about what? The name, I think. It's perfect. No, Kale. It's not perfect. It's my dead sister's name. He dropped his keys on the counter with a clatter. Yeah, I know. That's the point. It's a tribute. It would mean the world to your parents. I don't care what it would mean to my parents. The words came out sharper than I intended. I took a breath. This is our daughter. Not a do-over for them. I want her to have her own name. Her own identity. I pressed my hands to my belly. I don't want her growing up in a shadow, Kale. You have no idea what that's like. He softened a little, pulling me into a hug I didn't want. Babe, you're overthinking this. It's just a beautiful name. It doesn't have to carry all this weight you're putting on it. She'll make it her own. She can't, I mumbled into his shoulder, feeling defeated. They'll never let her. He pulled back, his expression hardening again. You're being a little dramatic, don't you think? It's a way to show love. To connect our daughter to the family. It's a way to make our daughter a living memorial. I won't do it. The next day I called my mom. I kept my voice calm and steady, rehearsing the words I'd practiced all morning. Mom, about the name. Kale and I have decided to go in a different direction. It's a lovely idea, but we want our daughter to have a name that's just for her. The silence on the other end was heavy. Then came a small choked sob. I don't understand, she whispered. Why would you be so cruel after everything we've been through? We just wanted to honor her. You can honor her without naming my child after her, I said, my own voice starting to shake. This isn't fair to her. Fair, she cried. Was it fair that she died? Was it fair that we lost our baby girl? This is the one thing we asked Kathleen. The one thing. She hung up. And then the campaign began. It started with text from my dad. Asterisk. Your mother is heartbroken. I've never seen her this upset. Asterisk. Then came the guilt-laced voicemails. Asterisk. I was just looking at Summer's baby book. She had your eyes, you know. Asterisk. Cale was no help. He kept telling me to just think about it and that my hormones were making me emotional. He thought I'd eventually cave. He didn't understand this was a line I would not cross. The pressure intensified. My parents started dropping things off at the house. A little yellow onesie. Summer would have looked so sweet in yellow, the note said. A framed picture of a sunset for the nursery. Subtlety was not their strong suit. I found myself screening their calls my own home, starting to feel like a trap. Cale was growing more and more distant, siding with them in little ways. They're just grieving Kat, he'd say. You could be a little more compassionate. The breaking point came a week later. I was in the kitchen when I heard Cale on the phone in the living room, his voice low. I know, Carol, I know, he was saying. I'm working on it. No, you're right. It's important to all of us. A pause. She's just being stubborn. She'll come around. We just have to present a united front. A united front. Against me. My blood ran cold. He had officially joined their team. My husband, the man who was supposed to be my partner, had decided that my feelings, my entire life's experience, were less important than placating my parents' 2-decade-old grief. He was conspiring with them. I didn't confront him. I didn't have the energy. I just felt a profound, chilling loneliness. I was completely on my own in this. 2 nights later, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened it to find my mother and my father standing on the porch. And right behind them, his hand on my mom's shoulder, was Cale. He wouldn't meet my eyes. What's going on? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. We need to talk, Cale said, his tone flat and formal. He brushed past me into the house, my parents following like a solemn procession. All of us. We're going to settle this right now. He turned to face me, and in his hand he was holding a piece of paper. A list. Your parents and I, he said, have put together a few reasons why you're being unreasonable. I stared at the piece of paper in his hand. A list. An honest-to-God bullet-pointed list. My chest felt tight, the air in the room suddenly thick and unbreathable. You're kidding me, I whispered. Number 1, Cale said, ignoring me and clearing his throat like he was giving a business presentation. It honors a family member who was taken too soon. It gives her a legacy. My father nodded gravely. Summer deserves to be honored, Kathleen. And my daughter, I shot back, my voice trembling. What does she deserve? She deserves to live life as herself, not as someone's legacy. Not as a memorial. Don't be so dramatic, my mother sniffed, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue she'd apparently brought for this very purpose. It's a beautiful name. People will think it's for the season. You won't, I said, looking right at her. You'll never look at her and see just her. You'll see the baby you lost. It's not fair to put that on a child. Number 2, Cale continued, his voice louder, now trying to steamroll me. It will bring your parents immense comfort and joy. It's a selfless act of love. Selfless, I let out a harsh, disbelieving laugh. You want me to sacrifice my own daughter's identity for their comfort? That isn't love, Cale. That's appeasement. It's about family, my dad boomed, his face turning red. Something you clearly don't understand. The emotional manipulation peaked then. My mother stepped forward, her hands clasped over her heart, tears streaming freely now. Her voice was a broken whisper. Just think of what your sister would want, she pleaded. Think of how I love my sister and miss her every day. Oh, Kathleen, I miss my baby so much. But she wasn't talking about her sister. She was talking about her daughter. The slip was so Freudian, so deeply revealing of the twisted up grief that had defined our lives that something inside me finally snapped. The dam of a lifetime's worth of resentment, of feeling like a second best consolation prize, just broke. I don't care what she would want. The yell ripped from my throat, raw and ragged. The three of them physically flinched. I don't care. I never knew her. Do you hear me? I never met Summer. She's not my sister. She's a story you told me. She's a face in a photograph, and a reason my birthday was always sad. Tears were blinding me, hot and furious. You want to name my baby my living, breathing daughter after a ghost? A ghost who has haunted every single day of my life? I don't want to name my daughter after a sister I never even knew. The silence that followed was absolute. It was heavier and more terrifying than the yelling. My mother looked like I had slapped her. My father's face was white with shock. But the worst was Cale. He looked at me with a mixture of horror and disgust. As if I was a complete stranger, a monster he'd accidentally married. My mother was the first to speak, her voice venomously quiet. You cruel, cruel girl. My father just shook his head, put his arm around my mom, and guided her toward the door. He didn't look at me again. Cale waited until he heard their car pull away before he turned to me. The warmth was gone from his eyes, replaced by a sheet of ice. I can't believe you did that, he said, his voice flat. After everything they've been through, to be that vicious. To throw their grief in their faces. Their grief I choked out. What about my life, Cale? What about the fact that they never let me just be me? Did you ever once stop and think about that? They love you, he clipped. And you just spat on the memory of their dead child. I'm sleeping on the couch. He walked away without another word, leaving me standing alone in the living room, my hands protectively on my stomach, my whole body shaking from the aftershock. He didn't get it. None of them did. They saw my boundary as an attack. My honesty as cruelty. I was completely, utterly alone. And a new, terrifying thought crept into my mind as I stood there in the wreckage of my family. What if he just writes it on the birth certificate anyway? He was one of them now. He could just go behind my back. The next few weeks were a cold war. Cale and I moved around each other like ghosts in our own home. We spoke only when necessary about bills or groceries. He never touched my belly again. He never asked how I was feeling. He was waiting for an apology, one I would die before I gave him. My parents didn't call. I was officially disowned, erased, for refusing to let my daughter become the sequel to their tragedy. The loneliness was suffocating, but underneath it, something new was growing. A hard, unyielding resolve. He was right about one thing. We did need a united front. It was just going to be me and my daughter. Against them. And I would not lose. The revenge wasn't a single fiery act. It was a series of quiet, deliberate moves. I called a family law attorney and had a 30-minute consultation. She confirmed that in our state as the mother, I had the primary right to name the child, and that I could ensure my name was listed as the sole informant on the hospital paperwork. Knowledge was power. Next, I packed my hospital bag, but I also packed a second bag, a suitcase. I put it in the trunk of my car and told my best friend Sarah that I might be showing up at her door in the middle of the night. The most important step came a week before my due date. I went to the hospital for my final checkup and made a special appointment with patient registration. I sat with a kind older woman named Maria, and I told her a heavily edited version of the story. My husband's family is putting us under a lot of pressure to use a specific family name, I said, forcing a calm I didn't feel. It's a name I'm not comfortable with. I'm worried that in the chaos after delivery, my husband might fill out the forms incorrectly. Maria's expression was one of complete understanding. She'd seen it all. Honey, she said, patting my hand, Don't you worry. We will put a note in your file. A big one. The birth certificate worksheet will be given only to you. No one else can fill it out or submit it. We'll make sure of it. When my water broke 2 days later, I didn't tell Cale. I texted Sarah. Asterisk, it's time. Asterisk, then I walked into the living room where he was watching TV. My water just broke, I said. I'm going to the hospital. He jumped up, his eyes wide with a flicker of the old Cale. Okay, let me get the bag, let's go. No, I said, holding up a hand. You're not coming in with me. You can wait in the waiting room. If you want. The shock on his face was satisfyingly real. What, Kat? You can't be serious. I'm the father. You lost the right to be my partner when you sided with them against me and our daughter, I said, my voice as cold and hard as I felt. You can find out when it's over, just like they can. Sarah is my support person. I didn't wait for his reply. I walked out the door, got in my car, and drove away. Hours later, after a fight, I won, all on my own. I was holding her. My daughter. She was perfect pink and screaming with a full head of dark hair. And as I held her against my chest skin to skin, the nurse handed me a clipboard. I looked down at the form at the blank line for her name. Then I looked at her, my beautiful tiny girl. She was her own person. She was a new beginning. I picked up the pen and wrote her name clear and bold. Chloe.
Story 11.
It started as these things so often do, with a name from the past. Alex. Guess who just moved to the city? Chloe asked over dinner 2 weeks ago. She was pushing pasta around her plate, her tone a little too bright, a little too casual. I took a sip of my beer. I have no idea. Alex, she said. The name just hung there in the air between us. Alex. Her college boyfriend. The one she dated for 3 years. The one whose shadow always felt like it was somewhere in the room. Oh, I said. Wow. Small world. Yeah, he got a job with that big architecture firm downtown. He texted me this morning to let me know. She finally looked up from her plate, gauging my reaction. And I asked, keeping my voice level. And nothing, she said a little too quickly. He just wanted to say hi. See if I wanted to grab a coffee and catch up sometime. I nodded slowly. Okay. Don't do that, she said, her defensiveness flaring. It's just coffee, Dan. We were a huge part of each other's lives for a long time. It would be weird times, not times to see him. I held up my hands. I didn't say anything. If you want to get coffee, get coffee. But what I was thinking was times. He just moved to a brand new city, and the first person he calls is his ex times. My gut tightened, but I swallowed it down with my beer and forced a smile. I trusted her. Or I told myself I did. For 2 weeks, it was just a low hum in the background. A non-issue. Then this morning she mentioned he'd been texting her again, pushing to see her. He's being so insistent, she'd said with a nervous laugh. He doesn't know anyone here, I guess. The warning bells didn't just ring. They clanged. Around 5:30 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was Chloe. Hey, you, she said. Her voice was upbeat, normal. The sound of her was a comfort, and for a second, the anxiety from the morning melted away. Hey, babe. How was work? I asked, leaning back in my office chair. A total marathon. I'm just packing up now. I heard the familiar sounds of her zipping her bag and clicking her keyboard. Listen, I'm going to swing by the gym on my way home. Just need to run for a bit and sweat this day out, you know. Sounds like a plan, I said. Want me to order some Thai for later? Ooh, yes, please. Penang curry. I should be home by like 8 at the latest. I'll text you when I'm leaving the gym. Okay. Love you. Love you too, she said and hung up. A perfectly normal phone call, a perfectly normal plan. There was absolutely no reason for the unease coiling in my stomach. I got home, ordered the food, and put on some TV. 8 o'clock came and went. Then 8:30. I texted her times. Hey, everything okay? Food's here. Asterisk. No reply. At 9:15, my phone lit up. A text from her. But it wasn't her usual style. No emojis, no exclamation points, none of the warmth she always poured into her messages. It was just 5 sterile words. Asterisk. So tired. Going to bed. Night. Asterisk. My blood went cold. That wasn't Chloe. Not the Chloe I knew. I hit call immediately. It rang 3 times before she picked up. Hello, she answered, her voice sounding groggy like she'd been asleep. It was a good performance. I'll give her that. Hey, you okay? That was an abrupt text. Yeah, sorry, she mumbled. The workout just totally drained me. I got home and basically collapsed. I listened. Not just to her words, but to the space-times, around times, her words. There was an echo. A slight hollow reverb that didn't exist in her cozy carpeted apartment that was crammed with books and soft furniture. Hers was a place that muffled sound. This was different. Open. Bare. My heart started hammering against my ribs. A horrible sinking suspicion began to crawl up my spine. I needed to know. I needed a test. Shit. Hey, speaking of your place, I said, forcing a casual tone. Super random, but did I leave my contact lens solution in your bathroom? The big blue bottle? I can't find it anywhere and I'm blind without it. A pause. It was only a second, but it felt like an hour. Oh. I don't know, honey. Let me look. I heard a muffled shuffling sound. Then the distinct artificial sound of a cabinet opening. It sounded off. Too loud. Then some vague rustling noises. She was putting on a show. Are you in the bathroom? I asked. Yeah, I'm looking in the cabinet under the sink right now, she said, her voice strained with the effort of her fake search. I don't see it, Dan. And that's when I knew, because I had used the last of that contact fluid at her place on Sunday morning. I had thrown the empty blue bottle into her recycling bin myself. It wasn't there. She wasn't there. Okay, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. Okay, no worries. I'll find it. You get some sleep. You sure I can look again? I'm sure I cut her off. Good night, Chloe. I hung up before she could reply. For a full minute, I just stood in my living room, the phone in my hand, my whole body buzzing with a sick electric energy. The lie was so blatant, so insulting. I grabbed my keys. The 15-minute drive to her apartment complex felt like an eternity. Every red light was a personal attack. My knuckles were white on the steering wheel, my jaw clenched so tight my teeth ached. I wasn't angry yet. I was something else. Something colder. I was just a man on a mission following a gut feeling that was screaming so loud it drowned out everything else. I turned onto her street and slowed as I approached her building. I knew her spot. Lot C, Space 48. The one right under the only working floodlight. It was empty. Her silver Jetta was gone. I pulled into the visitor's spot across from hers and killed the engine. The silence in the car was deafening. I stared at the vacant slab of asphalt where her car should have been, the concrete proof of her lie. She wasn't at the gym. She wasn't asleep in her bed. She was somewhere else. I pulled out my phone and called her. Straight to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. I sent a text. Asterisk. Where are you, asterisk? The three little dots never appeared. The message sat there delivered, but unread. I leaned my head back against the seat and closed my eyes, trying to breathe. For the next 50 minutes, I repeated the cycle. Call. Voicemail. Text. Nothing. My calls were being ignored. My existence was being ignored. The cold dread began to curdle into a hot, simmering rage. The betrayal wasn't just in the lie, it was in this complete and utter disregard. My phone screen was the only light in the dark car, a constant monument to her silence. 10:21 p.m. 10:28 p.m. 10:32 p.m. At 10:34 p.m., my phone finally buzzed to life, jolting me from my trance. Her picture filled the screen. Her name glowed under it. My thumb hovered over the green button for a second, my heart pounding a frantic, unsteady rhythm. I took a breath and swiped to answer, pressing the phone to my ear without a word. The line was quiet for a moment, and then I heard her voice small and hesitant. Dan? I let her name hang in the silence. I didn't help her. I didn't say a word. Dan, are you there? She asked, a thread of panic weaving into her voice. Where are you, Chloe? I asked. My voice was flat, hollow. The same echo I'd heard on her end was now inside my own chest. I told you I'm in bed. No, you're not, I said calmly. Your car's not here. I'm sitting in your parking lot looking at your empty space. So I'm going to ask you one more time. Where are you? The silence that followed was heavy with the weight of her entire lie collapsing. I heard a shaky breath, then the muffled sound of a car door closing. The engine started. I'm on my way home, she said, her voice cracking. I just left Alex's house. The name landed like a punch to the gut. It was real. It was all real. You just left, I repeated, my voice devoid of emotion. What time is it, Chloe? Dan, please. What time is it? I pressed harder this time. It's 10:30. And what time did you get there? A choked sob. Around 6. The numbers did a brutal, simple calculation in my head. 4.5 hours. 4.5 hours she had spent in his apartment while I sat at home waiting for her, staring at the cold container of Penang curry on my coffee table. So the gym? No, she whispered. The exhaustion? The going to bed early? No. You were at his apartment, I stated, laying out the facts like evidence in a trial, alone. From 6 o'clock until just now. What were you doing for 4.5 hours, Chloe? We made dinner, she confessed the words, tumbling out in a rush. We just cooked some pasta and opened a bottle of wine. We were listening to music and just talking. Cooking dinner. Listening to music. The image was so intimate, so domestic, it made me physically sick. She hadn't just lied about where she was. She had replaced me. She had played house with her ex-boyfriend for an evening. Drive home, I said, my voice like ice. I'll be waiting. I hung up and dropped the phone onto the passenger seat. The rage was gone, now replaced by a profound, desolate clarity. It was like watching a building you loved burn to the ground. You're horrified, you're devastated, but you know with absolute certainty that it's gone forever. There's nothing left to save. 10 minutes later, her silver Jetta's headlights swung into the parking lot. She pulled into her spot, space 48, the floodlight overhead illuminating her car like it was on a stage. I got out of my car and stood there, my arms crossed against the cold night air. She killed the engine, but didn't get out right away. I could see her silhouette through the windshield, her head bowed. Finally, the door opened, and she stepped out. Her face was blotchy and streaked with tears. She was wearing jeans and a nice sweater, not gym clothes. Dan, she started taking a step towards me. Don't. I held up a hand. The single word stopped her in her tracks. Just tell me why. I don't know, she stammered, pulling her sweater tight around herself. I was going to tell you. I swear. You didn't just lie, Chloe. You constructed an entire fictional evening. The gym, the exhaustion, the fake search for contact fluid you knew wasn't there. You performed. Why go to all that trouble? Her eyes darted away, unable to meet mine. Because I knew you'd be upset. I knew you would react like this. There it was, the classic defense. It wasn't her fault for doing it. It was my fault for how I would feel about it. The blame shifted neatly and cowardly onto me. A laugh escaped my lips, but it was a bitter, ugly sound. React like what I asked, my voice rising. Like an idiot for believing my girlfriend when she tells me she's at home safe in her bed? Or like a fool for finding out she was actually spending a 4-hour romantic evening with the ex she swore was just an old friend? It wasn't romantic, she insisted, tears streaming down her face again. Nothing happened, I swear, nothing physical happened. Oh, I believe you, I said, and the sincerity in my voice surprised her. She looked up, a flicker of hope in her eyes. I immediately crushed it. Because this isn't about sex. This is worse. You have been lying to me for weeks, haven't you? She flinched. What? No. The constant texting you brushed off as him being insistent. You've been talking to him every day, haven't you? Flirting. Reconnecting. I wasn't guessing. I was just connecting the dots that had been right in front of my face the whole time. This wasn't a catch-up, Chloe. This was an emotional affair. Her silence was my answer. The tears stopped. Her expression hardened into a defensive mask. The last little ember of hope inside me, the one that wished she would just break down and say, "I'm so sorry, I made a horrible mistake," went out. It just got complicated, she finally said, her voice quiet and resentful. No, it's actually incredibly simple, I replied, my own voice calm again. The clarity was back. You lied. You deceived me. You stood in another man's kitchen cooking a meal with him, and you sent me a 5-word text to dismiss me for the night like I was some kind of inconvenience. I took a step back, creating more space between us. The finality of it all washed over me. I don't know this person, I said, gesturing to her. The woman I love wouldn't be capable of this level of deceit. She wouldn't look me in the eye and lie so easily. Dan, please, she begged, the tears returning now that she was losing control of the situation. We can fix this. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But her apology was hollow. It was the frantic apology of someone who'd been caught, not someone who was truly remorseful for the hurt they'd caused. She wasn't sorry she did it. She was sorry, I found out. I saw it all so clearly now. There was no trust left. And without trust, we had nothing. No, I said, the word soft but absolute. We can't. I turned my back on her. I didn't look back to see her reaction. I just walked to my car, got in, and started the engine. The sound of her calling my name was cut off as I shut the door. As I pulled out of the parking lot, I glanced in my rearview mirror. I saw her standing there, a lone figure under the stark, unforgiving light of the lamppost, watching me drive away. Watching me erase her from my life. And in that moment, leaving her alone with the consequences of her choices felt like the only justice I had left. was a cold and empty victory, but it was mine.